Dr. Sarvis, you want to do the school board?
Good, I'll be happy to. Nancy Harder. Bob Noel. Here. Kate Parker.
Here.
Laura Malikoff.
Here.
And Ned Cordero.
Here.
Wow.
Thank you.
Good attendance. I'll get gold stars. So the city council, Brenda, go ahead.
We're big on attendance.
Yeah. I know. It's good.
Councilmember Falcone,
Here.
Francisco, Horton, House,
Here.
Schneider,
Here.
Williams, and Mayor Bloom.
Here. Whoa, not so good. We should send out the truant police or something. Anyway, well, welcome everybody, and we don't have a flag. We are looking for anybody with a flag on their lapel pin or anything. And without that, we just know that the courthouse is that direction. So if we can all stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance in that direction, we'll do that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
See, it worked. That was good. Okay, we have public comment first. Is that correct, Laura?
Spanish legislation.
Oh, that's right. Do you want to do that one?
Do we have someone who's doing the Spanish translation? Does anyone know? No. Uh-oh. We're waiting.
She can do it if necessary, yeah.
You want to say that to the audience?
Yeah, in Espanol.
Could you
Say
say?
that to them in Spanish.
That I'm going to be translating?
Yeah, that if they need it.
Into the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments.
Okay, public comments. I have one request to speak on the public comment. No. Okay, good, thank you. That's nice. We have two requests to speak. We have Carolyn Renard. You want to come up here, and then followed by Kate Smith. This is on something that's not on our agenda. Because when the agenda item comes up, you can speak. Ms. Renard?
First of all, I'm disappointed to see once again is this microphone working? To see that the most important agenda item has been put last once again. I'm going to be doing some plain speaking, but plain speaking is called for. Children are losing their lives. They're developing depression and other mental illness because they're being unnecessarily criminalized because of the truly appalling practices of the Santa Barbara School District, which I am asking the City Council to actually intervene in. I've been an advocate for low-income families with disabilities, such as children with disabilities, such as ADHD, learning disabilities, and mental health problems for many years. I've been appalled to see how students with these problems continue to be criminalized by the school system and not provided with the services that federal law mandates the schools to provide for them, instead of treating them punitively when they have problems in school. In fact, the pure human meanness I have seen while trying to help these mostly low-income Hispanic families has actually made me physically sick. I have watched as Santa Barbara School District has become increasingly sophisticated in their illegal practices. This problem has been greatly enhanced by what appears to be a purposefully constructed, speaking of school construction, a construction of a school board, with the exception of Bob Noel, that knowingly supports the school administration in these disgusting practices. These practices violate the rights of students, parents, and advocates, and the taxpayers who foot the bill. However, it is the vulnerable, low-income, and Hispanic families that suffer most. Santa Barbara School District is currently actively involved in what is known as the school-to-prison pipeline. This is such a nationwide problem that the ACLU has recently launched an entire school-to-prison pipeline program. Nationally recognized children's advocate Marian Wright Edelman has published a paper on it. criminalization of students who are not doing well in school works quite well for the Santa Barbara School District. They get rid of their low-performing students into the probation schools like El Puente, run by county schools, and bring up their No Child Left Behind scores, and county schools gets twice the ADA for kids on probation. I'm asking the Santa Barbara City Council to do what the Santa Monica City Council did with the sleazy practices of their school district and actually intervene and protect the kids that you're that are in your community that you're responsible for. I'm asking for some direct intervention, and I know you have a lot of nice programs going with the school district, but you guys need to do something. This school district is out of control. They think they're above the law. And they are, because no one is holding them responsible. I can't do it as a single person. You guys have the power to do it, and I'm begging you. Thank you.
Oh, Kate Smith, sorry. So you normally have a 3-minute rule, do you? Okay. We have about a 2 minutes, so I noticed council members started looking at me at about 2 minutes. So,
My name is
go ahead,
Kate Smith, and I'm a candidate for the Santa Barbara School Board. Our democratic society depends upon our schools to educate our children so that they grow up to be responsible and productive citizens. I appreciate the work you are doing on behalf of the community. I am heartened by this joint meeting of the City Council and the School Board. Indeed, it does take a village to raise a child. That being said, our school system needs organizational restructuring and educational reform. Our community is crying out for social justice. I support the candidacy of Jacqueline Inda and applaud the mobilizing efforts of her grassroots organization, Esperanza, and the efforts of Pueblo. I stand with the outraged and suffering families whose children are struggling in school, whose children have undiagnosed special needs, who are criminalized, thrown into El Puente and La Cuesta, rather than served by our schools. Taxpayer-paid school lawyers crush every attempt by parents to fight for their rights, services mandated by the law. There is no public defender for families thrown into the truancy program or facing the school attendance review board. There is no viable complaint procedure. I vow to expose corrupt individuals and their socially unjust programs. The gang task force is nothing more than a rearticulation of the truancy program. It has the same agencies, the same personnel, the same budget, and the same unjust practices that allow institutionalized racism, and it permeates our community. It destroys our families. Our community is gripped by Machiavellian mechanisms. People are in power and manage to deactivate their oversight boards and commissions so that they become nothing more than rubber stamps to policies, programs, and practices that serve to further their autocratic agenda. The budgets are unclear, and misappropriations are covered up. Backdoor meetings are a violation of the Brown Act. But last week, the superintendents met with the lawyer for both the county and Santa Barbara to, quote, present the district's procedure for minimalizing appeal reversals. I propose quality schools and student success. I propose parent and teacher support and empowerment. I propose slashing the administrative budget and bringing the money down to the school site level. And I vow,
whether I have a seat on the board or not. You can vilify me, you can hate me, but you cannot ignore what I'm saying. I vow to expose corruption in our city, and I will bring the eyes of our nation to witness how we, as a community, stand together, the council, the board, the parents, the teachers, and we create the schools for the 21st century that our children need and deserve, and we will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you. We have been meeting like this, the school board and the city council, since the year 2000. And it has been a very good time to make, good relationships between the school board and the city council. And I have found that I get so much out of these meetings. If you read all of the reports in the agenda today, it's just full of good things, and I think that's wonderful. I think if we didn't meet, we would have a very terrible time, each in ourselves, but we finally figured out that the kids are all the same kids, and the city council's trying to do some good things, and so is the school board, and so we can do better if we do it together. So that's why we're meeting. We meet twice a year in this kind of setting, and then the programs go on in between the times that we meet. And I have found it personally to be very fulfilling in a lot of ways. So, Laura, Laura's chairman, president of the school board now?
Only that we've accomplished quite a bit, and the more we meet, the more things get added to our list of things to talk about. And it's been, I think, very worthwhile. I agree with you. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. We have items 6 through 11 that are based on written reports. Does anybody have any questions about those? And we can go right to item 12, if not. Okay, item 12, presentation recommendations to resolve overlapping city and school district land title interests in various school campuses. And we just got a report on it, so and there we go. So Don, is this you on this? Okay. Yeah. Everybody see okay? Good.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members and school board members. We have a kind of a cleanup item here. We've been working on this for a couple of years, and it involves city overlapping land title issues on school district properties. And if you recall, that it was first brought to our attention at a joint meeting in June 2006. And at that time, the district asked the city to take a look at these kinds of issues with respect to Santa Barbara High School. And in response to that request, because of, many of us knew that there were other issues, very similar issues with other campuses, we decided that we should, if we're going to take this on, we should really take it on for all of the district's properties within the city. So we initiated a comprehensive research project, and basically with the intent of cleaning up a lot of these situations that have existed for, well, as many as, 88 years in some cases. But also in the process to look at ways in which we could facilitate an exchange of property that would benefit the Franklin School and on the district side, and for the city would benefit us with Fire Station 5, which is on La Cumbra School campus. So we started off and we researched all 16 of the district properties within the city. We compiled data. We hired a consultant to get into the nuts and bolts of this. we have prepared really very detailed, complete set of binders on all of this, and we've shared that with district staff. And today we're here basically to give you an overview of the results of what we found, and then to ask for your direction to go forward and proceed with the cleanup actions and the exchange. So first of all, the findings. Of the 16 campuses or 16 sites that we looked at in the city, we found significant issues on 2 of the district properties, Santa Barbara High School and Franklin. We found noteworthy some of the similar issues on 4 additional campuses, Washington, La Cumbre, Santa Barbara Junior High, and Peabody, but not as complex as Santa Barbara High or Franklin. Whoops. And then there are more minor cleanup actions at Cleveland, Hardy, McKinley, and La Colina. But we also noted that there were 6 district sites that, at least at this stage of our research, we have now not found any residual city interests. So you'll recall Santa Barbara High. Just an overview, in the 20s, the city vacated portions of streets throughout the campus, Quarantina, Figueroa, Carrillo, and Salsipuedes, basically to allow the district to go forward and construct the high school. We also at the time reserved easements for water and sewer mains. What we found, though, since then is that we did not vacate an untraveled portion of Quarantina Street that is also on the campus that really is near Alta Vista. And what we also found that while the city's ordinances to vacate the streets, we didn't follow through with the quitclaims, the quitclaim deeds back to the district. So in a sense, it's still it's gray, but we still have city interests. And when you look at it in total, our interests actually cover about 7 acres of the Santa Barbara High campus.
Wow.
And we also, along the way, and none of the people, by the way, that made these mistakes or didn't follow through are in the room. So just wanted to make that clear, unless
Thank you.
just in case you're looking around to, hanging on somebody's neck. There was also an error made when the city vacated Carrillo Street, that portion that runs from Olive to the campus, where the district is now improving that road that goes down to the lower campus. Well, that's still a city street because of the mistake. The vacation actually ended at Olive Street, and so we actually own a portion of your swimming pool and your gym.
You want us to fix them up? Pay you for fixing up that pool?
What's it worth to you?
Yeah, right. Right. And with a condominium development that was built there right at the end of Rinconada recently, as part of that, we required that a walkway be installed to connect Rinconada to that Carrillo Street, or that remainder street there. And we'll be looking to keep that walkway there. So in terms of recommendations on what to do with this, when we say per laws and guidelines, it's actually fairly complex in terms of the steps involved. These actions require environmental review, noticing public hearings, ordinances, drafting of deeds, recordation of documents. There's all kinds of process involved to really do it correctly. But it would be, with Santa Barbara High, we would be vacating those and reserving where we have easements for water and wastewater, making those clear. And then do actually the quitclaims that should have been done before, and then creating that walkway easement at the end of Rinconada. In Franklin, this goes back to the early 70s. We vacated a portion of Ontario Street for the school. We kept a portion of the street for public uses. Somewhere in that time, Yananali and Neal Park were closed. We reserved easements for water and sewer. Then later, by agreement, we allowed the district to place a temporary community center on a portion of our library property. And sometime in that era, it was removed, but the agreement remains in place. But then along came another agreement that allowed the district to use that for landscaping and walkways. And now school buildings have been put on it. But the agreement with the city was not amended to allow for that. So it's a lot of little stuff like that that has accumulated. And that site itself is approximately 7,000 square feet, I think, in lot area, not counting the portion of Voluntario Street, or Voluntario Street that goes through the campus. So in terms of cleanup, we need to vacate the excess streets and easements. We want to reserve our easements for utilities. We need to do the quit claims and work out how we're going to deal with that 7,000 square foot piece of the library property. And what we're recommending is that it be part of the overall exchange that would relate to our acquiring the land underneath Fire Station 5 at La Cumbre. Washington's even more complicated. It goes back to the 50s with the Coast Guard, and as you can see, there's still some unfinished business there with the Coast Guard, some of which actually may require congressional action to clear up their easement. But much of this will be worked out in concert with the work that the district is doing with the adjacent, or with the housing development project that is in process, that involves reconfiguration of your parking lot, I believe. So we will work diligently in concert with your staff on that. This again just recaps how that will proceed. And all of this information, by the way, is in the detailed report that we've distributed. At La Cumbre, in the 60s, you leased us some land for Fire Station 5, approximately 15,000 square feet. That lease is up in 2016, and it's now earning you $600 per year, which for us is a really big budget item.
I know, $50 a month.
So what we're looking for is that part of this agreement will lead to where we would actually acquire that land. And in the process, we'd work with you to clean up a drainage issue that is adjacent to it, basically coming off, the water coming off the adjacent apartment complex and their parking lot, which is on school district property. At the junior high, there's some old roads that ran down through that property that we vacated, but we're not quit claim to the district, and we have utility easements, and there are current buildings that are on portions of those, which make it a little bit complicated. But again, it's pretty straightforward. We go through that process of vacating those streets and reserving the easements, and what we would like to do is retain a public street easement at the end of Ortega Street off Milpas, where it bumps into, it dead ends into the junior high campus there. That is a very well-used access point for kids walking from the east side neighborhood to the campus. And we see if we could at some point install not a roundabout, but a what do you call it? Yeah, cul-de-sac turnaround.
Yeah.
There, that it would also help with the drop-off of kids, relieve some of the pressure from the front of the school and from Quarantina on the opposite side. But primarily, it would be for making it a safer place, or safer access points for kids walking to the campus. Peabody Charter in the 40s. Again, streets were vacated, but as you can see from the map, if you got into more detail, still a portion of our intersection at Calle Rosales, Calle Laraps, anyway, that all of that up there, a portion of that is actually on district property. A portion of the street is also on district property as it winds around down towards State Street. So we want to clean up that and make sure all of our previous street easements or right-of-ways are appropriately vacated and quitclaimed, which that describes. Cleveland, again, old streets were involved but haven't been fully taken care of. Harding, same kind of thing. In that case, though, there's a drainage easement that goes down Robbins through the campus, and it needs to be reconfigured because it's not all needed at this stage, given the recent storm drain improvements that were constructed. McKinley, again, just some minor things that need to be resolved. La Colina, same thing. There's a portion of La Barbara Drive is located on the campus. We have a sewer easement or a sewer main on the campus that we want to resolve. So a lot of this is more minor cleanup, but is certainly part of the package, and will the right thing to do is to do it and do it right. So next steps, we've want to continue to work with your staff on this. We want to finish the research that we're doing to make sure that we're not missing anything. We want to come back to the board and the council with a more formal agreement that would basically have the two bodies up front agree that we're going to move forward and we're going to resolve these things. It's going to take time and a lot of work. The public hearings, the environmental review, all of that will have to go forward, and when you get into the nitty-gritty of the detail, it just takes time and process. So again, we've been working with Brian and David Hecknyonk, and we would expect that would continue, and we'd finally, before we all retire, clean all this stuff up and get it all straightened out. But one of the major pieces of it is the exchange of the property. You get land at Franklin, that chunk of land, and we get the chunk of land under the fire station.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, Don
Sure, go
Ireland
ahead.
from
Sure.
Public Works, who's been intimately involved with this, is here, and you could add.
Just a quick question. The city uses the fire station. There's land right behind the fire station?
Yes.
That is not part of the fire station, is it? Or is
No.
that? But
No.
yet it's sort of landlocked in there. I don't know. if
It
that's
actually
city.
takes access from the adjacent apartment complex. And it's been paved for parking use by that apartment complex.
That's interesting.
But it's school land. Yeah.
But it's on your land.
Okay. Elaine, go ahead.
Thanks. Just to request when you look at Harding? I know Harding is looking at a lot of landscape plans and reconfiguring the campus, especially around that bridge area between the two parts of the campus, which is right where I think the issues you're concerned about. So to just incorporate that into it, if they're really going to try to make some changes, would be, I think, helpful.
Good.
Yes, Ms. Falcone?
Involved here. With respect to Washington and the ongoing negotiations that the district is in with respect to a landowner that is next door, there have been a number of years now of sort of back and forth discussions between the district and this landowner. None of those possibilities will be impacted by these actions at Washington. I understand the piece that goes into the Coast Guard area and what is now the shift from MIGS to shoreline and, you know, all of that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about where your parking lot ends and that other property owner begins. I just want to make sure that all the possibilities that your district is talking about remain alive through these, the vacation and then the various different land reconfiguration processes you're asking for us for.
Yes,
Can I be assured of that?
Yes, that definitely is part of the agenda, and we'll be paying close attention to that.
All right, thank you.
I wanted a couple of clarifications. I think that when you were talking about Franklin and the area near the East Side Library, you were using the number 7,000 square feet.
Something like that, yes.
Okay, and in the document, I'm seeing also reference to 16,000 square feet.
I believe the accurate number is more like 16,000 square feet.
Ah,
Okay.
sorry.
There was a 7,000-foot number in there, but the land area we're talking about is more like 16,000.
Oh, okay, okay.
Thank you.
And then also I had a question about the Harding, the Robin Street area, which I think is part of where the bridge is. And in the document, it says that was quit-claimed.
Yes, it's been quit-claimed. The city reserved an easement for utilities and drainage that is 60 feet wide, which means that if it's wider than it really needs to be, it could be reduced in width to accommodate whatever on-site development might be desired in the future.
Okay, that's what I was trying to, I think that's what I was asking is, we're just looking at the easement.
Yes,
Okay,
right.
all right, thank you.
Anybody else?
Okay.
Yeah.
I would really like to compliment Don
I was gonna
Ireland for all
say,
the
yeah.
work he's done on this. He had the support of Terry Green, Terry Zuniga Green, who is a longtime Santa Barbara resident, and many of you may know her. They have worked very hard on this, and it's very complicated, and it just, you have to, you know, just bite down and do it. And but it's really important. I think long term, to not have these kind of issues out there when you do your construction projects or whatever, just to have everybody know where those easements are, who owns what land, et cetera. It's very important.
May I add?
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
We have a banker's box full of information if anybody's interested in seeing it all. It was rather difficult for Terry Green and myself and Don Olson to narrow that information down to a mere few pages in a report.
Okay.
But it's very extensive.
I think it's really interesting, and but I'm not going to read the banker's box. But it is very interesting stuff. And so I think what we're doing is receiving this report and acknowledging the amount of work that must have gone into it. It's just truly amazing that we got it all kind of sorted in one way or another. And I don't think we need a motion. Do you want a motion? Or, I mean, does anybody want them to quit now? No. We want them to keep going, right? Yeah.
We're very thankful for
Yeah.
the city's efforts on this because some of these things were only uncovered through your diligence.
we've known about some of them for quite a while, and putting the whole package together has been a major undertaking. And again, you've taken the lead on it. We are looking for direction from you because we would like to bring documents back to each of the groups at the city council meeting and at the board meeting to ask for your approval to move ahead on this. And we feel that that will be necessary for us to enter into the hearings and go through the rest of the process. We can do that on our own, but we need your authority and impetus.
Sure. Well, maybe we should, yeah, go ahead, Mr. House.
I know
Yeah,
that
go ahead.
in our agenda for today, it says that these items we will not be taking final action, but the board and council may give staff direction on these. And I would expect that without taking action, that in the absence of any objections at this point, that you'd want to move forward with Godspeed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. Anybody else? Yeah, without a doubt. It's good. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Okay, without any objections, we'll go on to item number 13, which is presentation on the school district and city ballot measures scheduled for November 4th, 2008.
Well, we're going to switch PowerPoints.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you information on the board resolutions to place 2 parcel tax initiatives on the ballot for November. Earlier this summer, we'll roll pretty quickly through these, Don. Earlier this summer, the board did place 2 resolutions on the November ballot. One resolution, and I'll speak to this one first, is the high school resolution H 2008, and I'm speaking to that first because that will appear first on the ballot. The other resolution is for Measure I 2008 for the elementary district to be on the ballot. The high school measure H 2008 is proposing a tax of $23 per year over 4 years for each parcel. That would bring in approximately $1.2 million, certainly over $1 million. And I'd like to talk to you before I go to the elementary about what that would support. Specifically, this would support increased science, math, technology instruction, junior high music, arts, performing arts. We're talking about additional electives beyond what the district already funds in these areas. Additional electives in foreign language at both the junior high and the high school level, and a restoration of 9th grade math class size reduction, which is something that that was the victim of our budget cutting this last spring, where we took $4 million out of the district budget. And in that process, we were able to stay away from classroom programs in most areas. Most of those were operational expenses. We always squeeze operational expenses. And a lot of those are a function of our new budget director, our new CFO, Eric Smith's fine work. And we believe he's a lead in the state on school finance. At the elementary level, I 2008, the measure calls for a proposed tax of $27 per year for 4 years. That would bring in over $600,000, and that would be used to support additional science, math, and technology, and a classroom music program starting in kindergarten through grade 2, having music specialists go into every classroom on a regular basis at each of our schools. The elementary measure also includes charter schools. So it's not only the schools here in the Santa Barbara School District, which is primarily in the city boundaries, but the charter schools as well. There would be an exemption, of course, for seniors, which is available to parcel owners who are 65 years and older. And there are a number of safeguards that are put in place. There would be a citizen watchdog committee. They would look at regular reports and bring reports to the board, including outside audits, so that the board would see exactly how that money was actually spent. There's a provision in each of the resolutions that none of this money would be spent on any administrative salaries. This is a 4-year investment. We know that if it's approved by the voters in this community, that we would not commit ourselves to any expenses beyond that. And that's really it. I mean, it's pretty simple. Let's take a look at the last slide. The important point the board wanted to make in passing these resolutions was that here we are in a situation where we have a severe budget crisis on the part of the state. We've pared our budgets. We do have our own core programs in place. We have additional supplementary money for students who are lower achieving, for instance, in English language arts or math. We also have some additional funds, state and federal funds, for students who are English learners, for example. But we want more. And while I cannot advocate, my role is only to inform you. Speaking off of the resolution, the board made it very clear that the state cannot touch these parcel tax funds. They are local funds, and they would support the local programs that the community would deem as being of interest to the students in our community.
Okay, anybody on the board or on the council would like to ask any questions? We have a couple people who would like to speak.
Can I
Yes,
just-
Mr. Williams, and then,
Oh.
yeah, Parker.
First of all, I want to say as a very humbly small property owner that probably because I've bought recently pays probably more than my share of property taxes. I think this is still a great thing. It's very small compared to most people's property taxes. You're very responsible by having a very modest sunset provision after only 4 years. I think the voters should be very pleased that you tried to do something that would both help the kids and have so little of a fiscal effect on the average taxpayer. That is a good thing. But my question is, foreign language in high schools, such as would Chinese be restored in San Marcos High School? and stuff
Chinese
like
is a good example, French is a good example, Latin is a good example, especially in those courses where we can't gather 35 students in first year, or maybe we have in first year, but we can't carry that to second year, or maybe by second year we're down to some 18 students. That's not a class load that we can normally support.
And
Exactly.
anything in there for after-school recreation at all?
No, there was not for after-school recreation.
Thank you.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's
Parker,
okay.
thank you.
I just want to clarify, you said for the music for elementary that it was K2, but it's actually K6, right, for the music program?
Well, we already support music instruction in grades 4 through 6, and there would be some third grade component, but the primary classroom program would be in grades kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. We have music specialists. Because we only have a couple of music specialists, we are able to provide violin instruction to all fourth grade students, and we are able to provide additional instrument instruction on a volunteer basis to fifth and sixth grade students.
And my other question on that is for when Mr. Williams was talking about after-school recreation, but this would, for the junior highs, give more opportunities for a 7th period at the junior high schools, correct?
For those activities, yes.
Okay.
Yes. In fact, these would either be 0 period or 7th period, 0 period being before the normal start of the school day or after the typical end of a school day.
Yes. Ms.
Thank you.
Falcone?
I think that it's absolutely critical that, I don't really have a question as much as a comment, that the voters really understand that not only the money that you're asking for from people, but the money we're asking for from people are self-help, if you will. The money stays here. It does not go filtering up to the state and have them at their whimsy decide what portion of it they will return to us. The entire amount of the property tax that you're asking for and the sales tax that we are going to ask for, we're going to get a presentation in a moment, are all to remain here within our local jurisdiction to do the bidding of the local communities. So I really just want to stress that, and I think that that's something that we all need to, when we go out there, really continue to make very, very clear This is not money. We're in our 74th day without a budget at the state. It's unconscionable. This money will not go anywhere near Sacramento. It all stays here.
A point
That's
well
my
made.
point.
Maybe we should go ahead and have our presentation, then we've got some people from the audience too who would like to speak on either one. Yeah, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of council, and members of the board. My name is Bob Pearson. I'm the city's finance director, and I'm going to talk to you today about Measure G. Measure G is a ballot measure that on July 1st, the city council voted unanimously to place on the November 4th ballot. If approved by the voters of Santa Barbara, it will amend a portion of our existing utility users tax ordinance. And I'd like to start with just a little bit of background on the utility tax itself and then talk about Measure G. As I mentioned, the council voted to place it on the November 4th ballot. As part of the process of considering placing Measure G on the ballot, the city conducted a citizen opinion survey, and one of the things that clearly showed was a fairly broad lack of understanding about the city's utility tax in general. And as a result of that, the council has asked staff to put together a public information effort to try to educate voters so that when they go to the polls on November 4th, they will hopefully have enough information to feel that they can intelligently make up their minds whether they want to vote in favor or against Measure G. Next one, Don. So, background on the city's utility tax. This is not a new tax. In fact, it's been collected since the 1970s. It provides local funding for both the city's general fund and the city's streets fund. In fact, the revenue from our utility tax is split 50-50 between the general fund and the streets fund. So half of the money goes to the general fund and supports municipal services such as public safety, police, fire, and 911 communications, parks and recreation, library services, and community development services. And the other half of it goes to the streets fund where it supports street and pothole repairs and street maintenance. Over 150 cities and counties in California have a utility tax. Our utility tax, as I said, has been in effect almost 40 years. It's currently a 6% general tax levied on 6 different utilities: water, electric, natural gas, refuse, cable TV, and telephone. Measure G actually only affects 2 of those utilities. It will only affect both cable TV and telecommunications, telephone. So the other 4 utilities, which we currently tax and have taxed since the 70s, would not be affected, are not affected by or included within Measure G. Some background on the city's utility tax revenue for the most recently completed fiscal year. The total city utility users tax was $13.1 million, which means that approximately $6.5 million went to the city's general fund, and about $6.5 million goes to the city's, or went to the city's streets fund. And I want to echo the comments that were just made about local control. In the past, as we all know, the state, in an attempt to solve their budget problems, has reached down and taken local government property and sales tax. The utility tax and our bed tax, our transient occupancy tax for the city, are really the only 2 locally controlled revenues which the state cannot touch. And as you may know, they're up in Sacramento talking right now about whether they're going to take some more of our property tax for this year. But the utility tax and the bed tax are the 2 that are truly locally controlled. So that's, you see there that we've bolded the 2 telecommunications and cable TV because those are the 2 pieces that are the subject of Measure G, and those 2 combined total about $5.1 million. So $5.1 million, half of it again to the general fund and half of it to support streets. So in the current fiscal year, 2009, this is the allocation of the Measure G revenues, the $5.1 million, just based on a % of budget. So half of it goes to the streets fund, about $2.5 million, half of it to the general fund. And because public safety represents half of the general fund budget, half of the utility tax revenue goes to public safety. So in this case, out of the Measure G revenue, almost $1.25 million or just over $1.25 million goes each to support public safety, police and fire. So the question then is, why Measure G, and why does this go into the ballot at the current time? Well, there really are two reasons, and both arise out of the fact that, as I mentioned, that this is a 1970s vintage ordinance. It's been on the books for almost 40 years, and I think we're all aware of the fact that in the last 40 years, technology has changed pretty dramatically. And I think that a 40-year-old ordinance is simply out of date. So that's one reason. But I would have to say that the other reason is that due to a change in federal law about 2 years ago that affected the federal tax on telephone service, the telephone companies are now suing a number of California cities challenging the legality of their telephone utility users tax. Now, we don't know what the outcome of that litigation will be. The cities may prevail or the telephone companies may prevail. But I can tell you that for the city, it's about $4 million a year utility tax on telephone. And my sense based on the council discussion was that the council felt strongly that in the interest of fiscal prudency, that we ought to be proactive and put this on the ballot and ask the voters to reauthorize our existing utility tax, including telephone, in order to protect ourselves from that potential litigation. And we would do that because Measure G removes the references to federal law which were challenged and overturned. So really, in the interest of prudency, we put it on the ballot, we get the voters to reauthorize the existing tax, and we update the ordinance to reflect modern technologies. So Measure G is a modern communications tax ordinance. It provides modern definitions that are technology neutral, and I'm going to speak to that in a minute. And the tax equity issue that all users and service suppliers are treated the same. Now, I'll give you an example. Telephone service is taxed. You may have heard of a telephone service called Vonage. They are actually advertising fairly heavily on TV now. Right now, Vonage is outside the scope of our telephone utility tax ordinance, and that's because it uses the internet to route the calls as opposed to Verizon, which uses a pair of twisted copper wires. Other than that, it's telephone service like any other. You have a handset, you pick it up and get a dial tone, you punch a number in, and with any luck, you get someone on the other end to answer. It's telephone service. It just uses a different technology. But that different technology means that it's currently outside the scope of our ordinance, which was drafted in 1970. And the tax equity issue is about if you have telephone service, we're going to tax you or we're not going to tax you. It shouldn't be that some telephone customers are taxed and other telephone customers are not, simply based on the technology that's used to provide that service. And so Measure G will modernize the definitions to recognize the changing technology, recognizing the fact that that does somewhat expand the base of the tax. The City Council voted to place Measure G on the ballot at a reduced rate, and to reduce the rate from 6% to 5.75%. Now, I don't call it a tax reduction because the point of lowering the rate was to recognize that the base would be expanded slightly, and the goal was that the city would end up with the same amount of tax revenue as we do now. So while the tax rate will be reduced if Measure G is approved by the voters, it's not really a tax reduction. So I want to make that clear. This is the actual ballot language that the voters will see on November 4th when they go to the polls. And I won't read more than just the first, not sentence because it's one sentence, but the first line. It says, shall Santa Barbara adopt an ordinance reducing the telecommunications utility users tax from 6 to 5.75%? And then it goes on to list all of the services that the revenue supports. It talks about exempting low-income seniors, which is something we already do and which Measure G would preserve. It talks about prohibiting any future tax rate increases without voter approval, which is true. It's also state constitutional law. It talks about requiring equal treatment for all taxpayers, regardless of the technology. It talks about annual audits, public review of expenditures, and local control of revenue. So that's the actual ballot language. So in summary, Measure G would adopt a modern communications tax ordinance. It would solve the technology risks as well as the litigation risk and protect a critical city revenue source. Use modern definitions that are technology neutral. It would provide tax equity in that all users and service suppliers would be treated the same. Now, as I mentioned, over 150 California cities and counties have a utility tax. So this litigation and technology risks is not unique to Santa Barbara. Already, more than 26 California cities have asked their voters to reauthorize their utility taxes, and in every single one of the cases, without exception, the voters approved those reauthorizations, some with approval rates as high as 88 and 89%, which we all know is pretty strong support. In order for Measure G to pass, it needs majority approval, 50% plus one. And then I've been making these presentations for a few weeks now, and I just want to comment on some of the questions I've heard. People say to me, well, you want to tax my cell phone, and I kind of say, I'm sorry, we already do. So this is not about taxing cell phones, because that tax has been in place for almost 15 years. One thing it will not do, it will not tax internet access. That's currently prohibited by federal law, but the federal law expires in 2014. So unless Congress reauthorizes it, that prohibition against local taxes on internet access would expire. But the council unanimously made it clear to staff that they wanted the draft ordinance amended to make it clear that regardless of what federal law says in the future or doesn't say, that the city UUT ordinance will not tax internet access. And that's internet access whether you have, for instance, Cox or Verizon DSL, or whether it's a data plan on your handheld device, a BlackBerry, an iPhone, a smartphone. If you have internet access on your handset, that's internet access, and it will not be taxed. So those are the changes, and again, it's going to appear on the ballot on November 4th, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, good.
Oh, I'm sorry, can I just say that more information can be found on the city's website, and it includes the ordinances, resolutions, ballot language, staff reports, arguments both for and against Measure G, and rebuttals of those arguments for and against Measure G. So I'm sorry.
And the city's website is?
www.santabarbaraca.gov.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pearson. Mayor Bloom had to leave to catch a plane, so I'll carry on. First of all, we have three speakers who would like to ask us questions or comment from the audience. But are there any questions from the school board or from City Council right now? Okay, very good. Let's go ahead and start. Lynn Rodriguez, we'll start with you, and followed by Susan Deacon. And we'll go with the 3-minute school district rule. So.
Okay. Go like this with your hands or something.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and address the City Council and the school board. Is that on? I don't hear myself.
Is that light on there?
Yeah, okay. I wanted to just add a quick comment to something that Dr. Sarvis said about the measures H and I, that the decision about what kinds of programs to fund came from a survey of residents similar to some of the survey work that I think was done on Measure G. So I wanted to add that point, that some of the things that community members and Mr. Williams articulated, some particular things of interest, were not things that came out at the high end of the list. So what I am here to do is to just tell you I can speak on behalf of the measures, while the school board cannot. And so I'm co-chairing as a member of the Santa Barbara Education Foundation board, co-chairing the Yes on Measure H and I campaign committee. We are just now getting underway with fundraising and partnership development and getting endorsements, and we've had a lot of success so far in communicating with the public about the needs for this measure as were articulated by Dr. Sarvis. We desperately need a source of local funding that can keep the programs going that our kids want, that our families want for our kids to have. And so there really are so many positive benefits associated with these measures that we're hoping the community will understand. They'll understand, I think, hopefully the differences between parcel taxes and bond measures and what's happened in the past of the district and what this represents as a new program going forward. We're working with other organizations to promote these measures, such as the Partners in Education, the Santa Barbara Teachers Association, the League of Women Voters. We've had a lot of broad support so far for the measures, and that's been very encouraging. We are just at the beginning stages of getting a lot of things together. We have a website that will be live, I hope, by the end of this week, which is just yesonhni.com. We have all the ballot information on there, the arguments for and against. When you see your ballot, you'll see that there was very broad support in the arguments in favor of and the rebuttal to one argument that was filed against Measure H. So we've so far got a lot of support for our efforts. It's really important that people understand the accountability associated with this. There will be an oversight committee that will help, make the determination of how those funds are spent. It's so important. We're really trying to get the message out about the value and the asset of our public schools. We have so much. We're so blessed with that in our community. But for us to continue to stay competitive, for our students to stay competitive, we just have to continue making education a priority at the local level. If it's not going to happen at the state and federal level, then we need to do it here. Our students depend on that. The future of our community depends on that, because we all know what our students have when they go into the community is what our community is strengthened by. Our challenge is to make sure that everybody understands this. I think we sometimes fight the perception differences that are out there about what our schools can and can't do and what we're here for. This is all very positive. We hope to achieve the same kind of support that Measure V had for the City College measure that was on the ballot in November. They got 77%, I believe, and we're hoping to at least get that much. So keep your eyes and ears open for radio spots, print ads. Check out our website. And if anybody's interested in providing any support to our efforts, you can contact me. Mark Ingalls is the co-chair on this effort. So, and thank you to those of you that have already given us your endorsement. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Susan Deacon, please, followed by Gracia Lima.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan Deacon, and I'm a candidate for the school board. And I'd also like to speak briefly on behalf of Measures H and I. I know it's a tough economic time to ask people to dig into their pockets, but I think these measures should really be considered as investments in our children's future. Our children find success in lots of different ways. They find them in music, they find success in the arts, vocational electives, foreign languages, and these are wonderful avenues besides our core academic subjects for students to build self-esteem and to give them a sense of purpose. And emphasis on science and lower math classes makes eminent sense. We also know music in particular has links to academic achievement. Finally, as we consider strategies to provide alternatives to gang activities, we must develop robust ways to connect with our students. And I believe the passage of these measures will help us do this by fostering interest in activities that can grow into extracurricular passions. So I urge your support. I think I hear that all of you are supportive, so I guess I urge all of you to go out and get other people to support these measures. And as has already been stated, this is money that will stay in our district, and that's really critical. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Okay, Gracia Lima, and we had another speaker slip from Kate Smith.
Hi.
Gracia, thank you.
Gracia Lima. Hi,
Gracia,
everyone.
thank you.
I'm Gracia Lima. I am actually the new community organizer with Pueblo. I just moved from San Diego a couple weeks ago, so I'm really, really enjoying Santa Barbara. Well, the reason why I'm here, and I was here actually for another reason, but by looking at your presentation, I just want to applaud the efforts that you're making in, funding education, funding programs that are going to support our students and encourage our students. I do have a question as to how would the community committee that oversees the funds will be selected, and if it's an open invitation or if it's, how would it be selected? The other thing that I wanted to mention to you all, and it's great that the Santa Barbara City Council and the school board are joined, because Pueblo is actually working with a proposition that is called Proposition 4. It's a state proposition that is called the Safe Neighborhood Community Act. And even though it sounds really nice, it's actually not. It's Proposition 6. I'm sorry, I keep switching those. But Proposition 6, which is the Safe Neighborhood Communities, which actually would take $1 million from affordable housing, education, things that Santa Barbara has been proactive at, and would fund building prisons and criminalizing our youth. I would urge the city council and the school board to make an endorsement or to show support against Proposition 6, since it would be our efforts are to fund education, are to fund these programs. If our efforts are that, we don't want any more money taken away from education if we're already making our part. So that is my plea to the board. I hope that you put it either on your next agenda or in your next joint meeting, and I'm very glad to be here. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Kate Smith will be our last speaker on this.
I support the words of the previous three speakers. I would like to give another perspective, reiterating what Ms. Deacon said, that arts education, electives that interest and intrigue our children's passions, vocational training, and alternative programs are vital if we continue to work within the strictures of No Child Left Behind. We are in deep doo-doo. But I want to say to you, as you'll hear me come and talk about the truancy program, which I say is, you know, the gang task force is merely a rearticulation of the truancy program and criminalizing the students and penning them up in jail school, sending them to El Puente, a toxic waste site, and La Cuesta. I want to caution you, because these schools are in warehouses. They are surrounded by barbed wire. They do not offer sports, electives. My God, you're talking about a measure that is promising to your students the arts, vocational training. I'm cautioning, because if you offer them to our students who are in the Santa Barbara School District and the county, I will make sure that you bring in programs for these children who are incarcerated in El Puente and La Cuesta. There is a wasteland. And you have turned a blind eye and a deaf ear to their families, and it will not stand.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's back to the council and to the school board. Any comments? Questions for staff? Okay, very good. Well, then thank you very much for the presentation. And then, is there someone else? I'm sorry. Oh, you had a question. That's right. You did have a question. Let's see if that would be great, Dr. Sarvis.
After the November election, should the parcel taxes pass, the money would not be collected until starting July of this next year. So it would be almost a year from now. The board would appoint a committee, and the board, I'm sure, would welcome any sorts of suggestions about who might be on the committee, but it would be a board decision.
Okay, so that'll be a public process at the board level?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, great. Then are we ready to move on to the next item? Let's see, Mr. Armstrong and Dr. Sarvis, presentation on cities and school districts' collaboration in response to youth violence.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem House and members of the City Council, members of the school board. You may recall at our last meeting at the end of February, we gave you a presentation on some initial efforts we were taking at that time to convene various stakeholders in the community to talk about the issue of youth violence. And we gave you a brief presentation at that time, and the purpose today is to give you an update. I think we've made a tremendous amount of progress over that time about where we are now and where we're going. And I do want to recognize the great collaboration we've had not only with the school district, but with just a whole variety of other stakeholders in the community, both other governmental agencies as well as nonprofit groups, community groups. I mean, it's been just a great collaboration over the last several months working on this project. This is a little timeline. You may recall that what kicked this off was a terrible homicide that we had on State Street in March of '07. The council, right after that, when we were in our budget process, directed that we enhance the city budget to enhance police services, to also provide more after-school programs, and increase bicycle patrols, a number of issues. We gave the city council an update in November of '07, and we got some very strong direction from the city council when we talked about all of the different agencies involved in this, that they wanted the city staff to take a more active role in convening the various segments of the community, and that's what we've been doing since then. And this is, I guess, kind of the city needs to serve as a convener to partner with others to address the community problem of youth gang violence. And I think even then we recognized early on, this is not a city issue, this is not a governmental issue, this is a community issue, and we all need to work in this issue if we're ever going to really have an impact on it. As a result of that, we started out with a work session of 45 different stakeholders. We invited them to sit in a room. We sat there for 3 or 4 hours, and we just brainstormed about their perspective, the community support to do something, and deciding on next steps. This is just shows you a number, the different groups that were involved in that. It shows you, I think, graphically, the number of agencies, community organizations that some way or another are trying to deal with the issue of youth violence, and trying to get better coordination, collaboration among these groups it's a major part of this organization, of this effort. At the end of that meeting, we came to the conclusion that initial steps, one, we needed to get a comprehensive inventory of what we're doing already and who's working in this area. We needed to improve the coordination of the various programs and just reduce the bureaucracy. There's a tremendous amount of bureaucracy when you have all of these different agencies dealing. And some things just as basic as how does somebody get transportation for a group that needs to go someplace, and get past all of the issues about liability and workers' comp and all those things that sometimes hold things up, or if nothing else, delay the process. There was a desire to develop a comprehensive strategic plan, but also to not spend 2 or 3 years doing it, and to work on use as a foundation what's already occurred in the community, because it's not like people in this community have not been working on this issue for a long time, and there's been other efforts. And then to come up with something where we could institutionalize a long-term solution. Unfortunately, what happens when you have incidents of youth violence is there tends to be a lot of activity for a year or two, and then funding goes away. Oftentimes these issues are grant funded, and there's not a long-term way to institutionalize the kinds of collaboration and efforts that we need. And so there was a real desire among that group to institutionalize whatever we're working on. Again, you saw this graph at your session in late February, but I want to again call it out. If you just look at the city of Santa Barbara, there's close to 17,000 youth. And yet in most of those youth, a large majority are engaged in healthy activities, and not creating the kinds of violent problems that we're seeing now. But we do have approximately, and again, these are just rough estimates, in our city alone, we have youth that are heavily involved in gang activities, probably 100, and we probably have another 750 that are affiliating with youth gangs and have a high risk of being involved in youth violence. And our focus was on that center there, not to try and deal, even though it's important to have the prevention programs, but to really deal with and focus on folks who are children that are already engaged in youth violence or at a risk to become engaged in it. As a result of that meeting, and because a big part of the emphasis was let's look at a long-term strategy, we convened a strategy planning committee, which was a subset of that group with some other folks brought in. And again, you can see this is a group that represents governmental agencies, nonprofit agencies, it has foundation representatives, it has gang outreach workers that are on the front lines. It's a pretty broad group to start working on looking at long-term strategies. They started meeting on March the 11th and met through June the 9th. And as I said, every other week we met on Monday mornings for 2 hours. We had some lively meetings about what was going on, and really came up then with 2 objectives. First, to get something going this summer. And so we formed a short-term summer program group that would focus on on work that was going to occur during the summer, and then a second group that would look at that long-term strategy. And so our purpose today is to give you a briefing on what happened this summer, and then talk about the recommendations from our long-term strategy committee about how to move forward. And I'm going to ask Marcelo Lopez from our office to give you the report on both of those, because he's one of our best facilitators in the city, and he's got he's got the ability to move an organization or a discussion forward, and also have perfect handwriting at the same time and so he's done a wonderful job over the last several months.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Mr.
perfect
Armstrong.
attendance too.
Mr. Lopez?
Mayor and council and board members, good afternoon. I'm Marcelo Lopez, and I went through the public school system, and that's where I developed my writing skills and the ability of having good penmanship. I frankly acquired those in Mexico City, where I was born. So when I came to the United States, that really was very handy for me. I am going to give you a presentation, and the presentation that I'm giving you today really builds on the different sections. I think it would be in the best interest of the audience, as well in the best interest of the board and the council, to allow me to go through the whole presentation. Because as the sections veil from each other, I may be able to answer some questions as I go through this process. First of all, the short-term program committee. There were two committees that were established, as Jim indicated. One was a short-term program strategy committee, and the other one was a long-term program committee. The purpose of these two committees were to develop something during the summer versus a longer-term plan. So you can see from the group that's on this slide, the group was chaired by Fred Rasso, and it included a cross-section of the community, individuals that are involved in youth gang prevention, intervention programs, a pretty well represented group. Now, we could say that there are some folks missing. In fact, there are. We can say that the group could have been larger. In fact, it could have. But it gets to the point that sometimes they get too large, too unwieldy. So there had to be some point where we could manage the process. We felt that this group that was involved was able to do just that. And you'll see from the product that has been developed and will be presented to you today that we have made significant progress. What was the goal of the summer program? Well, the goal was to organize and implement, organize, and implement a summer program targeted at youth that are involved in youth gangs or are at risk of being involved. The outcomes that we were looking for was to improve the educational standing, a very critical piece of this process, to reduce the occasions for conflict by providing an alternative activity. And I think we've done that in many cases. And a very important piece of the thing was to improve coordination and communication by the many agencies in the community that are involved in providing services. The summer program, to operate from June through September 2008, it was targeted at 82 youth. A big part of this plan and this program was individualized attention, individualized plans, individual family and youth counseling. So as we look at this program, it's not only working with the youth, but also working with the families. Jobs and summer activities. It was accomplished by way of what is called a triage of delivery agency coordination by a community school resource team. And the focus was in the Santa Barbara South Coast. This next slide shows you the triage of delivery. It shows key elements of this program: education, human services, law enforcement, probation, working hand in glove to try to provide some of the services that you see here. A key part is coordination. The focus, as you've seen in previous graphs, is the risk at youth, those that are involved in gang activity. I think that some of the folks that we did not see during the summer program, during some of the meetings, but were working behind the scenes, were the caseworkers. These are the caseworkers that work with the youth, that work with the families to provide those services of individualized services. Program coordination was provided by the Santa Barbara County Office of Education, and you see three key players in this process: Fred Rasso, Ben Romo, and Bonnie Beatles. This provides you an illustration of what happened with the summer program. First, after the youth was identified, there was an assignment to caseworkers who together with the youth and in some cases the parents developed individualized plans. These plans were designed to really identify what educational services the youth may need, what sort of counseling needed to be provided, both vocational as well as personal and family counseling. Support services that may be necessary. Sometimes we think of a problem as an educational problem or a youth gang problem or a very narrow focus, but in fact, there are so many issues that need to be addressed. This was one effort, one attempt to try to identify the individual needs. And at the end, you see the step number 4, was to really develop some way of trying to measure some of the progress. And you'll see that from the preliminary data that I'm providing to you right now, it gives you an overview of what was accomplished. Now, there is much more data to be obtained. There's more analysis to be done. But remember, we started this program quickly. It was started without additional resources. It was started with a spirit of cooperation. It was started with people stepping up to the plate and saying, let's do something. And we've used a theme throughout the effort and the way, and that is that if every possible objection must first be overcome, nothing of significance will ever be accomplished. So in some cases, you may think, or you will see, could this have been developed a little bit more? I think so. But did it accomplish some of the objectives and the results that are essential for the success of a program? And you will see that we have done that. 82 students were served. 30 of them were secondary school graduates. 24 came from Los Robles High School graduates, and 6 from Santa Barbara High School. 52 out of the 82 were secondary school-age students. 60 of them were high school credit compliant. 36 of them were deficient and needed summer school. If we look at those that attended summer schools, yes.
Just Los Robles is where? That's El Puente, right? No, I mean, sorry, it's Los Prietos. Los Prietos Boys Camp. Okay, want to be sure everybody knew where that was because it was a bone of concern.
17 who attended summer school, 12 achieved credit compliance. That's 70% of those that attended, and 5 transferred from homeschooled into El Puente. A statistic that was really a very good statistic is that 43 of these youth were on probation, and 40 of them completed the terms and conditions of probation. That's 93%. That's quite an impressive number. But sometimes, we only look at the numbers, we only look at the stats, but what is some of the feedback that we have received from some of the youth? And this was part of the information that we received through the County Office of Education, that in working with the students, some have said, I'm scared. I don't want to end up in prison. I want out, but I don't know how. So providing a mechanism and some guidance was very important. I don't want my younger brother to join a gang and be like me. Work with him, please. A lot of times you find that in working with some of the youth, it's not only, some of them may already be involved with problems, and it's difficult to get out. But one thing that is in the back of their mind and in their heart is they're really not clamoring for the rest of the family to run into the problems that they have run into or to experience the same hardships. And we see that as a very sincere effort on their parts. Thanks for helping me to learn how to speak to my daughter. Now we're talking. Is working with the families, working with the youth, creating that communication mechanism. I know I can do it. All I need is a little bit of help. Folks are out there asking for assistance, and I thought that no one cared. Thank you. As we looked at that program, and it completed during the summer from June through September, what has happened now? We've established what we now call the Bridge Program. Might be an error bridge. It's not as solid as we would want it to be, but we have accomplished certain things. We have shifted the casework from the Santa Barbara County Office of Education through 9 schools, 3 junior high schools, 3 high schools, 3 alternative schools. These schools have received what we call 52 briefs, and they have been sent to the school counselors for the purpose of continuing to work with these young people. What have we accomplished also, or other actions that have been taken? We have continued to provide program support. There are 82 youth. 52 went back to the school system. The 30 other students are receiving assistance through the Santa Barbara County Office of Education. We continue to improve agency communication and coordination. That's one of the big benefits of the effort underway. We are monitoring progress to identify needs and provide support to those needs. We're collecting data to be able to better evaluate the effectiveness, the efficiency, the results, and the things that need to be changed with the program that we have established. And they have agreed, the committee has agreed to collaborate with the Long-Term Strategy Committee, which takes us to the next piece of the pie, okay? We started with, in January, with the group that said come up with some plans. We brought the group together, and then we had the short-term steering committee. The short-term steering committee was one of the two committees that were established, the summer program. Now we get into the longer program, the long-term strategy committee. This is the effort, if you will, to look beyond the summer and to begin the process to develop an institutionalized program. And again, you see a group of folks that were involved in this process. You can see law enforcement, you can see administration, you can see education, you can see agencies that provide human services to the population that we are trying to reach. What were the goals of this group? To build on the foundation established by the short-term strategy group. In a very short period of time, a lot of things were accomplished by the summer committee. To establish a clear differentiation between policy and operational roles and responsibilities, and to focus on a strategy of coordination, not on operating programs. Part of the long-term strategy, there's a very clear point, very important point, and that is that the strategy is not proposing to create new programs to be operated by this structure that I'll be presenting in a minute, but rather to look at the wealth of programs that are in this community and to facilitate the process to help them work better. And lastly, to create a South Coast model that has a potential for a county-wide expansion. The key elements, again, builds on the summer model of the gang specialists who work directly with gang members and at-risk youth. It fosters an environment for better collaboration and coordination of new and existing programs while providing for a permanent leadership structure that will help us facilitate the process of having ongoing funding and institutionalization so that we move from the reactive mode of there's a crisis, we come in with the funding, there's a reaction, but as time goes by, then funding goes away, the effort begins to diminish. So one of the things that we're looking at is to institutionalize the effort. And lastly, it really focuses on the need to measure program results. It would be a shame to really get involved in a process, fund it, and then at the end have no mechanism to determine, did it provide the services that were necessary? Did it accomplish the objectives that we were looking for? So clear to the group working on this process is that there needs to be some form of a measurement system. The next slide shows you the organizational relationships. And the word relationship is very important. It's not an organizational structure. It's not a top-down structure, if you will. This diagram represents the 4 pieces of the long-term strategy. I'll go over each of these in the next portion of the presentation. But you see, if you look at this pyramid, at the top of the pyramid is the policymakers and chief executives that are involved in this community that are seen as a foundation of being able to get that commitment for this program. It involves the executive director coordinator. If you see the relationship, the executive director would be for purposes of working clearly with the policymakers and the chief executives. And the role of coordinator would be to work with the client service program operators and with the gang outreach specialists. Even though you see those lines connecting the executive director to the gang outreach specialists and the client service operators, it does not envision a chain of command or a support relationship. The key piece here is to talk about coordination. So when we talk about the gang program outreach specialists, who are these folks? These are the frontline persons working on gang intervention, suppression, and prevention. 3 key words throughout this presentation, key 3 words that have been the focus of all of the discussions: intervention, suppression, and prevention. So the strategies that we are looking at all fall under one or cross over those categories. The idea is for them to work as a team, to focus on youth who are or have been identified as potential gang members. Ideally, there would be gang outreach specialists assigned to El Puente and each of the junior high schools in the South Coast. And ideally, they will not only spend the time in the school, but a substantial amount of that, approximately 25%, would be spent outside of the normal school day, working with the families, working with the youth. That intervention is very critical. They would also provide input for client-specific plans. Again, as we begin to work with the youth, there needs to be the element of something that's personal, something that you need to have, not a cookie-cutter approach. Yeah, I got that one right. It's hard for me to say cookie-cutter, so I got it right. So pat on the back for me on that one. We want them to counsel the youth and families and link them to the programs that will help them move away from the gangs, to serve as a confidant who can be trusted in times of need. A very, very important relationship, someone that I can go to in a time of need. And we all have that in our own lives. And particularly for some of the youth that are involved in some of these activities, they need that level of support and confidence to help them move on. To work with the other youth gang specialists to avert conflicts and reduce gang violence. The more we learn within the schools of potential problems, the more we're in a better position to try to avoid or prevent some of them. The organizational assignment, they could be placed in their respective schools. They could work within a different structure, but they need to be involved in the process. They should have a coordinated training and briefings to ensure a consistent strategy and an approach. Again, we have not developed all of the pieces that go into this, but you see the themes, the underlying themes that are important to get us in that direction. The client service program operators, that's on the left side, if you remember, on the diagram that I presented. Who are these? Well, unlike the individuals who are in the front lines, these are the organizations that are on the front lines, directly providing services. Youth gang suppression, youth gang intervention, youth gang prevention. These folks are envisioned to meet on a regular basis to promote coordination. A key thing that we have done in convening the groups and having the discussions is that we have realized that there are different resources available. And in many instances, it's just simply working better that will give us better results and yield a synergistic effect. In terms of the organizations which we have called the team, the Prevention, Intervention, and Suppression Program Team, the purpose is, again, we use the same thing, to plan, to organize, to implement, and monitor youth gang prevention, intervention, and enforcement programs, to establish better linkages and coordination, to work as a team so that together we can reduce bureaucracy and take advantage of the resources available within the organization, and again, to build from and support the work of the short-term strategy committee. Who may be these members of this team? This is a partial list. This is only a partial list. We could fill this, we can go page 2, page 3, page 4, but this is an indication of some of the organizations that are out there already providing services to help youth move from youth gangs. Moving then to the top of the pyramid, the policymakers and chief executives, a key piece of this structure. We envisioned that we would have a leadership council that is made up of community officials leading or representing political organizations who can commit resources. Would be made up of 9 elected local government officials, 2 foundation officers, and 1 each representing families, youth, UCSB, and the faith community. We try to be inclusive. We try to make it as, we try to make this leadership council as complete as possible to be able to get the commitment. What's their purpose? To provide policy oversight, to provide policy direction, to represent a South Coast regional commitment to a 5-year pilot program. We're not looking at a 1-year program, we're recommending a 5-year program to have that consistency of commitment to allow us to begin the process of institutionalizing the effort. These would be the folks that from a policy perspective would be able to commit and secure resources. These are you around the table and some of the representatives that would be involved. They would also be responsible for meeting with the Executive Council to measure progress and chart direction. The Leadership Council versus the Executive Council, I'll talk about them in just a minute. This is not a group that we would envision that would be meeting monthly or every other week. In fact, it's a group that we envision would meet probably 3 times a year, every 4 months, for purposes of really keeping the focus on the program, on the progress, and on the policy direction from the Leadership Council. The Executive Council, on the other hand, is made up of South Coast Chief Executive Officers who can provide direction, organizational support, and funding for this partnership. The composition would include a representative from the Sheriff's Department, the Sheriff, the Chief of Police, UCSB, Santa Barbara City College, Business, Fighting Back, All for One, Community Action Council, Santa Barbara Foundation, Probation. You see the rest of the list. And the 4 city county executives. This would be the county administrator, the city administrator from the city of Santa Barbara, the administrators from Goleta and Carpinteria as well. The purpose of this group would be to serve as a pass-through structure for joint projects, to allocate the resources and reduce bureaucracy, to also be the group that hires and oversees the gang program director coordinator, and to institutionalize policies and programs. Now, these are the folks that in your organizations, your superintendent is responsible for getting things done as a result of board policy. These are the folks, your city administrator, that as a result of council policy gets things done. What a strong group of folks to have pay attention on the problem of youth gang violence. Now, that's a level of commitment that's critical to this process to help us be serious about dealing with this problem. This organizational structure is a work in progress. We're trying to figure out, is it something that could be part of an existing organization? Is it something that could be established by way of some form of a consortium agreement? You know, we're still not quite clear on that level of organizational structure, but it is clear, at least from the recommendations from the group that has been working on this, that it is an important element to be able to have the level of attention that this effort merits. Initially, we foresee that this group would probably be meeting monthly, and after the program is implemented and is underway, they would probably be meeting less. The executive director is an important piece of this puzzle, of this program. Is an individual that would be appointed by and reports to the executive council. It would staff the leadership and executive councils. This would be the individual that sets up the meetings, that gets the direction going, that implements the direction from the leadership and executive council. It would be the individual that would be charged with identifying program gaps and to facilitate organization linkages and coordination. One of the things that we have learned in this effort as the city staff and Don and I and Jim and the rest of the city staff started working on the convening role, the importance of getting people together. That same level of effort has now transferred to the rest of the players around the table. So while initially it was a city convened effort, it has now really gone through the rest of the organization, and many efforts of coordination are taking place. Now, we envision that an executive director coordinator will continue that role. It's a critical role to keep the focus, to keep things moving, to make things happen. It would also implement the strategies to accomplish the goals of the program and to monitor program results. There is a handout that I believe has been distributed to you that gives details of some of these particular responsibilities. I'm going to go on and just talk about the larger picture. And one of the responsibilities is to really help to procure additional funds, to establish a system, to administer the whole program. Lastly, moving to the organizational relationships, we can go to that particular slide. Again, I talked to you about the policymakers' role and responsibilities along with the chief executives, the importance of gang program outreach specialists in this process and how they are the frontline workers, the client service program operators, and then the executive director. As we begin talking about the role of the gang program outreach specialists, it's so important to look at that role, but not to forget the casework management aspect of it. So that is not forgotten in this program and in this plan. But right now we're looking at trying to deal with the first things first. Something like this is going to require funding. We have not identified and have not put together a budget for this process, but we have identified some potential partners that could help us, the county, the city, foundations, the school districts, the business community, UCSB and Santa Barbara City College. And we might, by having this combined effort, there are many opportunities to procure grants. You know, if we're able to get sufficient funds to run this operation, perhaps to create some matching grants, that would give us the opportunities to be more competitive and generate more resources. Lastly, we're looking at the possibility of in-kind support. There are more than cash. There's more than one way to provide support to this effort. It doesn't always have to be cash. It could be functioning as the employer record. It could be providing the systems and procedures, the money, the machinery, the methods to be able to run an organization. Legal representation, office space, equipment and supplies, information technology, and even additional staff support. My last slides cover the next steps. And on January 31st, one of the clear things that came out of that group is that it is a regional issue that requires regional collaboration and an institutionalized structure. And that's what we have been that's what I just presented to you as a recommendation from the groups. In terms of next step, we needed to secure approval. And we have secured approval from the steering committee that was working on this. We had to go back on September 8th. On September 8th, we made a longer presentation of this program, and we did receive the approval from that group to move forward and then begin to implement this program. We foresee that there's going to be the need to assign interim full-time staff to refine and present the program to the South Coast partners. The South Coast partners meaning the cities, the county, and the other players that have been identified on your list. And lastly, to begin presentations and secure endorsements from the counties and cities to institutionalize the effort to address youth gang violence. And that covers my presentation. I try to go fast. I try to go slow enough to give you the information, but it's a lot of material. A lot of work has been done in a short period of time. And there are folks in this room that have been participating in this process. And I'll be glad to answer questions as well as the city administrator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lopez. And we have a number of people who want to speak, but let's take a moment just to get some questions asked, if there are any, from the council and from the school board. So an awful lot presented to us here. And any questions for our staff at this point? Yes, Ms. Cordero.
Just had a really quick comment, I guess, more than a question, and that is, there was a recommendation at Monday's meeting that perhaps more youth should be added because having one young person on a committee that is dominated by people perhaps perceived as bureaucrats can be intimidating to the young person. Has there been any more discussion about adding or changing the composition of the various councils?
You know, we did hear the comment. We have recorded it, but we have not done anything new because the committee hasn't met.
Okay.
So we need to go back to the committee, provide some of the feedback that we have received. And again, this is a process that we foresee that what you have today is a good foundation. But over time, depending on needs and conditions, it will have and it should change. And one of those aspects is looking at the role and the involvement of the youth that we're trying to serve.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go
ahead,
It might be
please.
helpful, after you get the questions from
Yes.
the group, is to have Superintendent Sarvis talk about what he's been doing in terms of the gang intervention specialists as well, before you get the comments from the public.
All right, very well. Do you want to do that now, and then we'll go and get more questions? Let's go ahead and, okay, let's get the questions right now. We've got Ms. Parker, you're on, and then Das, she'll be next.
Okay, first my question, Mr. Lopez, is did Carpinteria Unified participate extensively in this committee work?
No, Carpinteria Unified has not participated in this process as of yet. We envision to involve them. We started as a city effort. We have evolved into a South Coast effort. Our next piece of this process is to begin to outreach to the other players. Now, I know there has been some discussions with some of the other cities, very general discussions, but we're building this thing as we go along, and we're learning more things as we go along and identifying some other gaps. To answer the question, no, but that's in the next stage of the process.
So, okay.
At least not from my end. I'm not sure if from the school districts or some of the other folks, there has been any other coordination, but I see no. So.
Not at least at the board level.
Well, we've had discussions with the superintendent.
Okay. And my other question is, on your slide 24, for the long-term strategy key elements, it says builds upon the summer model of gang specialists who work directly with gang members and at-risk youth. And I just want to be clear that in this case, that's talking about the caseworkers, the summer program caseworkers, that
Yes.
list of, okay.
It deals on the concept of casework.
Okay.
It deals on the concept of youth gang intervention.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Great. Yes, Mr. Williams.
First of all, I think you, both Monday and at this presentation, answered most of the things. I walked in on Monday ready to like have a list of interrogation things on deliverables, but between the quality of the work that was articulated, I think, best by the outreach workers and the statistics of the sort of quantitative deliverables, I think you really answered most of the things that I wanted to know that this was a good effort and worthwhile. I guess the thing that I keep on pounding on is ongoing funding for issues like this, and have you looked at it, just the possibility of assessing a business license fee tax? It would need voter approval on marijuana dispensaries of $5,000 per establishment, and that would provide, not a lot of money, but enough to at least employ one worker into perpetuity.
No, we have not looked at any specific new strategy to raise additional funds. As we go forward with this process, we hope to work with the cities and the county and the other organizations to identify, one, what our needs are, two, potential funding sources, and if appropriate, to come back with any recommendation as to any new way of creating funds. That would be something to put on the table. But at this point, no, the answer is no, specifically.
Okay. Other questions right now? Yes, sir. Dr. Noel.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. I have a lot of questions. I guess the first one's, this is a lot of material. I didn't know about this report until I was told by a member of the public, and was able to scratch, he gave me a copy, and then I was able to study it, and I've been looking at it. I don't have the impression that there was much public involvement in it, and I find that problematic. I don't have the impression that there was much involvement by elected representatives in it. I find that even more problematic. Your statement that this is a start, we're getting there, and we're going to get farther. Depending on where you start, where you go matters. If you start somewhere else, you'd see something quite different. Now, let me say that's a little vague, okay? Let me be much more specific. If you started with the proposition that I take out of the research literature that says anti-gang programming appears to be most effective when it is aimed at the supply of new gang and group members rather than existing and well-established street gang members. Programs in high schools can reduce fear and intimidation, dry up the source of gang personnel, and help generate a broader negative perspective of gangs, especially among young adolescents. Now, if you started there, I think you would get where you went. You would get to a case management approach with a specific set one-on-one approach. But you couldn't have gotten there without going through the question, what are we doing in our schools? What educational programs do we have to minimize alienation in our schools, to connect kids with schools? Connected kids don't join gangs. That's backed by the research, it's backed by common sense. We do a rather poor job of connecting rather large numbers of kids with our schools. This is like so this program is good, and don't misunderstand me. I think the case approach with the identified people you're talking about is utterly crucial. But for us to conclude that we have a program that is addressing the whole problem would be a very big mistake. For us to set in place structures which are only oriented toward the case management approach would be a big mistake. It's sort of like a finger in the dike, okay? And we got this large pressure behind the dike waiting to come through, and the supply will keep coming. You know, we can plug a finger in the dike, but it's still there. We've got to address this in a more balanced way. We've got to do a better job in our schools. We've got, and you know, the list is long. The research is very clear on the kinds of things that work, the kinds of things that don't work quite so well, and we're not addressing those. And it would be a big mistake, from my point of view, to put something in place that we think is solving the problem and gives the illusion of solving the problem when it is only addressing the immediate problem of the people who are already in the gangs. That's an important one. I want to say that over and over and over again. And I think what you're doing is excellent on that. But it has to be part of a more comprehensive, truly prevention program. I understand about suppression, and I know whose job that is. I got the intervention, and I hear you loud and clear, but I don't see much prevention in here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I may respond to your question about public involvement. You know, when we started this process, it started through public council meetings. And at council's direction, we were given the direction to convene a group of folks. And we started that in January. Immediately after that, when we convened the meeting of the strategy committee, these were public meetings. These were noticed public meetings that were well attended by the public. The public was given an opportunity to participate in the discussions, and probably in many regards taken us longer than what we initially had planned. You know, a lot of times you plan the meetings to go a certain way, but you know, we went different directions as a result of public input. I don't disagree with you, and I don't think the members of the committee or the individuals that have been working on this project disagree that there's a lot more that needs to be done, particularly in the area of prevention. There are other communities that have done other things in other areas, and I think what we need to take a look at, I think the good news right now is that those three words are there, and we are doing more in one area than in the other, but there are gaps to be filled in all three. Because by no means, even though you showed satisfaction with some elements of it, the suppression and intervention need a lot more work. We are in the early stages of this process. The process of prevention needs a lot more work. And it's something that's going to take a little bit longer. It's something that's institutionalized. It's something that is going to involve a number of players in this process, the school districts, the different schools, the different partners in this process. Establishing better collaboration is very important, but I just wanted to comment in terms of the public aspect of your question.
Well, I think you ought to remove the word prevention until you have a prevention program, because it's very misleading. And in terms of public, I want to say, because maybe I missed the announcements, I was certainly, and I'm a relatively attentive member of the public. I was not aware of any public meetings, and I was never, as an elected official, told that there was a public meeting that I could attend. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah. Okay. It's unfortunate that we did meet every other week for months.
Okay, very good. You know, we also are fortunate today, at least I noticed in our audience here, we have Fred Rosso, who is coordinating the early phases. Police Chief Sanchez, Deputy Police Chief Glaus is here. Michael Gonzalez, I notice, is here. Ben Romo, who's been very actively involved in this, and Nancy Rapp and Sarah Hanna from our Parks and Recreation departments here, and others who have participated. I know for myself, I attended nearly all of those meetings, and there were a number of us who were elected who did participate, and a lot of public showed up. And it was, and I just say that because even though if you missed it, you missed something pretty amazing. And so certainly this is the beginning of something, if my understanding is correct, and there's a long way to go yet. I think that, do we want to have some, oh, go ahead, please, Annette, and then I would like to see if Dr. Sarvis has some more that he'd like to add.
I just wanted to make a quick comment to assure members of the public that there actually were a lot of members of the public at these meetings. There was a period in the meetings where public could comment on the reports that they had heard. They could ask questions, they could give input, and there was also public comment period, separate from responding to any specific item in the report. So, I think there certainly were people who chose not to participate, or for whatever reason, decided that they didn't choose to be there. But there was a lot of, it wasn't just the committee that met, or the task force that met. There was an audience larger probably than the audience here, who did attend the meetings.
Okay, and Ms. Falcone, before we move on.
Very, very briefly, I just wanted to address Dr. Noel's concern about the elected officials the policymakers that seem to be, the folks that give the direction and so forth. Well, actually, the elected officials were kept out of this process by design, quite frankly, because we tend to want to take credit for everything. And so we wanted this process to really just evolve in its own organic way with all the various different nonprofits and organizations and institutions that were in the room, of which there are many, maybe even numbering close to 100. And the last thing that kind of a process needed, with all of those folks trying to come to get together in some way, were a lot of jockeying for positions between elected officials. And so, to be quite frank, as an elected official, that is what was sort of decided, and we all nodded our heads and said, fine, this is so important, we have to have this work, and we'll just sit in the audience and listen. So that's what we did.
I'd like to respond to that, if I may.
Dr. Noel.
Some elected officials also have some expertise and some analytic skills, and sometimes even rise above politics and taking credit. And I would love to have been given an opportunity to take a look at this flow chart. I have colleagues. I worked for 35 years in political science, have public administration colleagues. I share things with those colleagues. I learn things from them to this day. And I developed my own flow chart, my own organization chart, in a way that shows some gaps in the thinking that has gone into this. Now, I mean, you don't have to listen to me, but I would love to have had a chance to try to persuade you. And it's that kind of thing. I'm not talking about a public meeting where necessarily that is for a large-scale participation, but I don't think this process accessed a very wide skill set that's available in this community in the design process.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Noel. Dr. Sarvis, I think you had some more things that you wanted to add.
Well, I wanted to talk about where the board is in this process, because the board's had its own discussions. We've been meeting with the city since Angel Linares was killed in March 2007 on a regular basis. And we were part of this community collaborative, and again, city, we appreciate your taking the lead on this, because this brought more agencies together in this community than I have ever seen. The amount of collaboration, the number of people involved representing different organizations, different agencies, different concerns, was tremendous. The board is currently grappling with whether to run ahead with the hiring of two of the specialists, two of the outreach workers to work as gang prevention specialists, or whether to wait until the collaborative community plan is fully developed. And it's a healthy dilemma. It's a healthy dilemma because on one hand, gang stabbings on our streets have not spilled over into the schools. Our people seem to do a great job of keeping our schools as gang neutral environments. On the other hand, we think our luck will run out. And we certainly have a huge obligation. These are our kids. They're both the perpetrators and the victims. We certainly have a huge obligation to teach them to interact with each other in acceptable ways. The board has studied the Department of Justice report. That's this report, which is the Office of Juvenile Justice on Delinquency Prevention's best practices to address community gang problems. They refer to it as a comprehensive gang model. And in so doing, the board has had its own discussions about elements of that model that are necessary. Many of those elements are elements that you see in this report, and this is why we sent this to the board last month so that they had an advance copy of this. As you heard, the community collaborative process resulted in a short-term, interim program over the summer, and that program identified 82 students, or 83, the numbers. There are a number of people who are critical to that program, and I think that program was a success because Cam Sanchez was directly involved, because Fred Razzo was directly involved. We had a number of agencies who contributed significantly to that, and you saw a list of those agencies. However, we have 53 of those students who are coming back to our schools. Roughly half of them are coming back to the El Puente program, which is county schools program. Roughly half of them are coming back to our campuses. They need continued case management, and we need to provide that. In addition, we have to reach many of the students who are not in this core group of identified offenders. Kids who are more on the fringe. Many of them are 7th, 8th grade, 6th grade students. Kids who have gang affiliations, or kids who are just more on the edge and attracted to this. We have to reach those students, and we have to provide help to their families as well. The board is currently considering whether to hire 2 outreach workers, and we use the term outreach workers rather than gang intervention specialists because that's the terminology out of the Department of Justice report. But you know, when you talk about how these people operate and whether they operate in schools or a large part in the community, that is different in every community. These people are in some ways community liaisons, in other ways counselors, in other ways able to connect people to agencies, and again, each community has its own model for that. The urgency is that school has started. Do we run ahead, or do we wait for all of the elements to be put in place? And the urgency is clear. 3 children have died in this community. We want many of the elements to be more fully developed, and the dilemma is this: when we talk about a clear assessment of what's going on in the community and what's going on in our schools, the training that's really necessary for these people to be effective, the supervision. In fact, we had some of our best supervision this summer out of Court and Community Schools and out of Ben Romo's Center for Community Action, which is, both of those are county education office programs. The clarity about how these people would operate, whether they operate half-time in the schools, half-time in the community. As you saw, we were early talking about having them operate primarily in schools, some of the time, 25% of the time in the community. We frankly don't know. We frankly don't know what would work best. Their connections with the community would be very important, not just with agencies, but also support from the community and from agencies. One of the things we grapple with is, well, this is a community problem. Does the school district run ahead on this? Do we stand alone in supporting this financially, or will the community back us? The evaluation component is huge. We don't want to put anything in place that we cannot evaluate and can't make good decisions about. You know, many decisions are made based on anecdotal evidence. And we profess to be data-driven, but we want to make sure we have those data elements in place right up front so that in the end, we're able to make good judgments about the effectiveness of this program. Well, those are a lot of the elements that still need to be more fully developed. We are planning to discuss this. In fact, we're planning to bring back an interim plan to the board to run ahead with a couple of these specialists and to continue to work with this process to let this plan mature and develop a more comprehensive plan with a lot of these elements in place. And we expect to take up that discussion at our next board meeting.
Great. Well, thank you very much. You know, we have a public who have wanted to speak, and I think we should go to them right now. They've been waiting a long time. And, we'll go through that. We have a number who would like to talk to us. Let's start with Joan Esposito, please. And then Jacqueline Inda, please, would be next. And if your name is called to be next, why don't you go on over there and just sort of wait so you're ready to go, and we can make sure everybody gets a chance to be heard.
Good afternoon. My name is Joan Esposito, and I founded the Dyslexia Awareness Center 17 years ago. I'm going to hand out some information that I brought today. Many of you know I've been coming in front of this board and the Board of Supervisors for 20 years on this issue. I've given you, number one, the front page of a copy of hearings in Congress in 1977. These hearings were held on the connection between learning disabilities and juvenile justice. There's testimony in here from everyone from a 12-year-old child up to congressmen themselves, parents. Again, this is a very rare copy, and I hold it with great regard, okay? But it's an interesting copy. I guess what I'm trying to say is we're going back to 1977. We know why we have juvenile crime. We know the reason why we have juvenile crime. Why are we reinventing the wheel and putting more money into this issue? Why not look at the issue? It is children who have not learned how to read and write, and then children who've gone on to be teenagers, and they're now emotionally disturbed. I have 44 feet of files in my office from children from the Santa Barbara School District alone. The majority of those files are children who've been through the juvenile court system or having trouble in school and being expelled and sent to El Puente. The other piece of paper, the other paper I gave you was stopping the schoolhouse to jailhouse pipeline by enforcing federal special education law. I saw nothing in this presentation today. There was nothing in the truancy program grant either back in 1997 on learning disabilities or enforcing special ed laws. If we don't enforce special ed laws, we are going to continue. The truancy program was a failure. It did not identify the issues. This program, though it looks good, will be a failure unless we look at the history of juvenile delinquency and learning disabilities. I was called up by Janet Reno. I was on a committee in Washington, D.C. on this very issue because of my work in this area. The schoolhouse pipeline, the jail, this article was put together by the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Disability Law Center. It's a recent article. They're pointing out that 75% of children in the juvenile justice system have an educational disability. And then a lot of these children are going on specific learning disabilities and emotionally disturbed. The other article I attached to you is a document. It's a part of a newsletter that I put together when I was the president of the California Learning Disabilities Association. The top quote is from a Judge Jeffrey Gallant from New York, a juvenile court judge, who said, "If you cannot read, there are only two ways to make a living: the welfare system or crime, and crime has more status." The other quote is from my hometown in Liverpool. As by the time you find out your child is dyslexic, he could be starting his first sentence. Of course, we have the cufflinks. I spent 2 years putting together a 38-page report for the City Council, and it was called Education and Mental Health Neglect Leads to Truancy. In this, I talk about how the truancy grant did not have anything in that. It was put together by the Director of Special Ed in Santa Barbara. Nothing on learning disabilities related to truancy, nothing related to our crime problem in this town. And, you know, the City Council does have a copy of this. They also have all the additions to it. I really recommend that we look at these problems before we go ahead and hire an executive director or a program director, and before we put money into this program. We don't need to put more money out in this city because all the other programs like Mr. have been illusions. And I'm sorry that we don't have more time today. I would have liked this hearing, just this part of it, to be open to the public at large. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I hope that today, before we're done, we'll have a chance to really make sure we've talked about those next steps and other opportunities for people to participate, because I think that's an important part of it. So Jacqueline Inda and then Myra Romero will be next.
Make sure my crutches don't fall. Okay, so my name is Jacqueline Inda, and I'm here on behalf of a group called Esperanza. Esperanza was a community effort, actually in the direct response to these community meetings that happened throughout the city. A lot of the parents and a lot of the youth that participated in these meetings had a lot of feelings and had a lot of emotions. And with those emotions, nothing got done. They felt like there wasn't a real hear of what they needed, and they didn't feel the connection of continuing on with the executive planning of this kind of process. So what Esperanza did was hear the kids and hear what the kids wanted and the kids really desire within Santa Barbara. What we learned is that the kids feel like they don't have that voice, and that wherever they go, they feel rejected from one program to another. And in fact, when they've tried to stand up in regards to these kind of issues, they always get asked the question, well, where are your parents? Or what kind of problems are you in? So the parents started coming to Esperanza showing the same kind of interest. Well, we go to these meetings and we're told, well, where are your kids? And are your kids the one in trouble? Well, you must not know then. And the reality is that started building a conflict within our parents and within our community. So they started meeting in sort of different places. Esperanza then started creating a movement to join the forces within the Latino community and get those parents and youth to start brainstorming on all the ideas that came up in these meetings. So we actually purposely did all of our advertising through all of the Spanish-speaking media to address all of the brainstorming things that people had already addressed as concerned. So I guess the message there is that the community, in the Latino community, we feel like there is no voice directly contacting these kind of programs that are happening in an executive level with all kinds of community agencies that may have their own interests in regards to funding. So the real issue here is giving our youth that response and that real direct feedback on how they're processing and how they're actually connecting with these kind of programs. You have a really good model, and again, it's just the beginning. I'm not saying that this kind of programming can't work, but the reality is you can build the best program in the world. If the community doesn't have a backing to it, you have no point. And in the community, you already have that feeling of resentfulness because the voices of the community are not being heard. And the reality, if you're looking at the models and not really putting in 50% of those members in the executive committees and those committees that aren't parents and youth, then you have an override on whatever a youth or maybe a parent might want to say in regards to the way that it's being implemented in the future. So one of the things that, just to stay really on task here, it really is to bring the message across that you have a basic program, but the reality is that our community isn't buying into this kind of program because of so many losses that have already happened within our community. We need to be able to do more to outreach to those parents in a grassroots effort that'll give them the brainstorming ability and be able to give that community buy-in. If you don't have a community buy-in, your program is not going to be successful. And the reality is that in these meetings that we've had with Esperanza throughout the whole west side and east side, brainstorming has already started to occur, but the message isn't really connecting. So we need to work on that more. And not only that, when you look at programs like this, those executive committees shouldn't be people who are there for their own personal interests in regards to funding. It should be led by at least 50% parents and community who are directly affected by the issue at hand. So that's what I'll say to that. And again, remember that the only reason why we're really doing this is to give our youth and our parents that feeling of that they do have a voice within the community. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Myra Romero will be followed by Brenda Lopez.
Hi, my name is Myra Romero,
am one of the youth. I'm a part of Esperanza. First of all, Esperanza had a question, which was if there were any flyers sent out to parents at school or at home to be invited to the public meetings, because a lot of our parents didn't hear anything about this program. And Esperanza has a lot of personal comments that we gathered together from the East Side meeting we had and the West Side meeting we had. So one of the comment was that there's lots of agencies out there who are focusing on people that they want to be a part of their programs, but not for people who really want to be in it. A lot of people don't feel that they're welcomed into a lot of programs. Agencies promise lots of things, and as soon as they receive their grant money, they just forget about what they had promised. And another quote is that, who are these people, right, who, like Jackie said, there's lots of people who want to be a part of this committee for this program who aren't directly being affected by what's going on. So who are these people to tell the community what the program should be formed like? We are the ones who are affected, so it makes us the experts. And that's all I came to read, so thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Brenda Lopez? Okay. And then Lourdes Uribe? And Lourdes will be followed by Zoila Aguilar.
Good afternoon. My name is Lourdes Uribe. I didn't know this morning when I got up that I was going to be obviously coming to speak in front of the City Council and the school board. I've been to the School Board of Education for some time. I've never been in front of the City Council, so I might look a little bit intimidated. I don't know. Obviously, my primary language is not English, but I'm going to do my very best to express my feelings. I'm the parent of 5 kids. My oldest daughter just made it to UCSB. She is an amazing kid, and I have a 16-year-old daughter who is hoping to be able to do the same, but I have 3 boys. My oldest son is 21, and he still have a frame somewhere in his room where he hoped to be able to put his high school diploma when he graduated. He was not fortunate enough to be identified with a condition, learning disability, and hasn't been able to get an education. I have an 18-year-old son who is probably also not going to graduate at Dos Pueblos. He is in a sport program, but he may not be able to be in a soccer program because he doesn't have the GPA, like he didn't do last year and the year before and the year before, to be able to be eligible. To be honest with you, he lost the desire to learn because his reading level, I just learned back to school night. Last week, that is 5th, 6th, 7th grade level. He's not reading, at his level. But he continues to go to high school because he wants to play the sport. But he's not gonna be able to do that because he has an educational program, an IEP, a legal document that it says that a program should be like this, but a new special ed director probably doesn't agree with that, and illegally is subjecting my son to failure to school, to be able to play. My kids obviously are not in gangs. They have a Christian foundation, but they struggle with emotional issues, and they're gonna have depression, and they're gonna have to deal with those things. And together with my family, we're having a hard time coming up with an idea of how we're gonna put all this suffering into a good use. I'm here just to express my opinion, that as Dr. Robert Noel said on his Sunday, I think, long article, a lot of our kids have been left behind. I came from Mexico thinking that my kids were going to get the best education in the world because this is the best country in the world. I was born across the border, Tijuana, and I got an education. And when I was told that my kids had learning difficulties in this district, my life had to stop. I also have emotional issues because it's very emotional that the dream of your life is probably not going to happen in the near future. And in the meantime, we're subject. It's very hard to feel ignored. to put phone calls trying to save your son. I have put like 10 calls in a week. Have had no response. I will use the word retaliation from our special education department with no problem, because retaliation, is something that I haven't seen for probably 2.5, 3 years in this district. The other special ed director helped my kids. It wasn't perfect, but it was okay. My 14-year-old son got services. He was identified when he was first grader, and he's doing wonderful at Goleta Valley. I have hope for my little baby, but my 2 other kids are gonna have to struggle for a long, long, long time. Next week, or in about a few weeks, there's gonna be GPA for the athletic eligibility, and my son is gonna be having a hard time. He walks out and takes walks for his depression. A few weeks ago, a police stopped him and asked him what his troubles were. And they contacted me and they told me that I needed to come and make a lot of noise because my son was having a very hard time. He explained his problems. I'm looking for a specialist to help him with his depression. I need to help my son. Please help the other kids, our kids, and the kids of everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Uribe. And perhaps when we're done with the public speaking, or at some point, somebody from the district could make contact and see if there's something in particular that you can do for some of the things that are being addressed to us today. Mrs. Aguilar, and then followed by Gracia Lima.
Sí, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Zoila Aguilar. I will be translating for Ms.
Thank you
Aguilar.
very much.
Yo trabajo con la organización Pueblo. Agradezco a la mesa directiva que nos han escuchado, y como madre soltera yo pido que nos sigan mandando a nuestros jóvenes a la escuela La Puente. Esa escuela debería de ser cerrada. Jóvenes que entran a La Puente ya no se gradúan, más bien van para la juvenil. Y ahí los sacamos más enfermos porque nomás los tienen en cuartos encerrados y sin hacer ninguna actividad que sea beneficiosa para ellos. Pedimos que sean integrados nuestros jóvenes como normales, como menores de edad que son, y que les deben de dar toda la ayuda para que ellos puedan graduarse sin tener que ir a la escuela La Puente.
So I'm going to translate what Ms. Aguilar said. And she said, my name is Zoila Aguilar. I am a member of Pueblo, and I would like to thank every single board member for your time and patience. I am a single mother and would like to give my opinion on La Puente School and other community schools also. I truly ask for your support to please help us, parents and community organizers, to stop sending our youth to La Puente and other community schools. They enter La Puente school and do not graduate. Instead, they get sent to juvenile hall for being out on the streets and for not attending a school where they feel they are not getting enough help and support they need to be able to continue with their future. Once they are in juvenile hall, they get sick from being indoors without being able to breathe fresh air and seeing daylight. They are in a small room where they feel they go crazy, in which they have no activities, which will help them with their future. So we ask that our youth be seen as normal, some even being underage teenagers, so that they may receive all the help and support without being sent to La Puente and community schools and keep being labeled as gangsters. There are children that need to be kept busy and entertained. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Aguilar. Gracia Lima, and be followed by Carolyn Renard, please.
Hi, everyone, again. I just really want to express, as community organizer of Pueblo and staff of Pueblo, my complete support to the movement of Esperanza. I think that you all are, being proactive in this issue that we have in our community, which is gang violence. But I do think that we do need to make a bigger effort into providing that public input and community support. Just like Jacqueline said, we need to bring to the table 50% or more of community, community involvement, not organizations like Pueblo who might get funding, who might, benefit by creating this program. We need to bring, Soila, we need to bring specific parents who are being, who have the issue at hand. Like Mayra said, they are the experts. They are the people that live with this day by day. They are the ones that survive every day. They're the students that have to choose every day whether they join a gang and, tomorrow they commit possibly criminal offense, or they continue to school. And what are the resources that they're using in order to survive every day? I think we need to, just like Bob Noel said, we need to put a lot of more prevention into this program. I think you have a great base. I think that, this is still preliminary hearings. We're not going to make a decision today, which, I hope you don't. And finally, it's just that we do need to put that public input. I wasn't here in Santa Barbara. I don't know if there was that public input, but from what I heard from my members and the members of Pueblo is that they were not involved in these discussions. The other thing that I want to point out is that I have been in Santa Barbara for a week. Well, actually 2 weeks. And but for a week in my job. And already I have heard about 10 parents who have complained of their students being sent back home because they were dressed as gang members. I know that you just passed the dress code, and that dress code is enforced. In San Diego, we had a dress code too, but I just can't believe how many students are being sent to La Puente, which is a school who specializes on at-risk youth for no reason at all. For example, Zoila had her daughter sent to La Puente because she was missing credits. I don't think that is the reason why you should be sending kids to La Puente. And the second, I heard another case of a woman that her daughter was sent to school because to La Puente again, because her daughter was having issues with her classmates. And I don't think that is the at-risk youth that we're targeting. And I think that when we're talking about the students that we're targeting and the students that we want to help in preventing gang violence, I don't think that is the right outcome to do. To send, someone that is just missing credits or going to school with a shirt that says West Side into La Puente school. That is a school that is not a smart choice. It's not efficient. It takes away the resources that we should be putting to those kids that are really at risk. And I just would like for us to address as to who we're targeting and what the community input into this program. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your comment. Carolyn Renard and then Kate Smith will be our last speaker.
I think it's important for you.
Next to the last speaker.
I think it's important for the City Council to know also that when Santa Barbara School District sends children who are not getting good grades to El Puente, they are trying to raise their No Child Left Behind scores. It's a very handy way for them to do that. And County Schools that runs El Puente gets twice the ADA per pupil for kids that are on probation. So it's a really handy system they got set up here. And I think that it's very irresponsible that the schools have been playing dead on this issue and trying to get the City Council and the rest of the agencies to do all their work and now to get money from them to do their work. Like Mr. Noel said, let's look at the research. The studies show that children who are alienated from their schools, if they're alienated from their schools, you get exactly the kind of problems that we are seeing in this community. That is, you can't argue. There's so much research showing this that you can't argue it. It shows that students who are connected don't have these kind of problems. And it's just very typical that Mr. Sarvis is trying to base his whole program on research from the U.S. Department of Justice. Well, he really should be looking at the research from the U.S. Department of Education. It shows that there are effective ways that the programs the schools can use to reduce dropouts. There is so much research done on that, and these programs are free to the schools, and positive school-wide behavior programs have been shown to work to reduce youth violence, to reduce dropout, to reduce alienation. They work. They're working in other areas of the country. These gang intervention specialists that Mr. Sarvis wants in, you know, you'd be a lot better off using them to bring in a positive school-wide behavior program that's been shown to work. The other thing is, you know, I know that there's been a lot of work put into this program that's been developed, and some sort of program does need to be developed because of what's happened, because of the schools in large part. However, I don't see anybody talking about research-based program here. I don't see any research showing that this is going to be effective. You know, shouldn't the city be investing itself in something that's based on research and not just, as someone said, reinventing the wheel? I mean, this is a very expensive wheel you're trying to reinvent. Also, I'd like to say that Ms. Cordero, your comment that there were a lot of members of the public in those meetings is very misleading. The only members of the public who were there were those that were invited, or whose friends happened to mention it to them because they were invited. That's why there were members of the public there at all. I looked into this, and I know that's true. You know, I don't know why Joan Esposito, who spoke earlier, who has a well-respected nonprofit for 13 years in this town, the Dyslexia Awareness and Resource Center, was not invited to participate in this group. It has the largest library in the state on the issue of learning disabilities and juvenile justice. She was appointed by Attorney General Janet Reno to participate in a national U.S. Department of Justice conference on juvenile justice and learning disabilities. She's an expert on these issues. She was ignored because her agency actually tries to help these kids and asks for institutional change.
Well, thank you very much. I need to leave some room here now for the last two. We have Kate and Kate Smith, and then Jordan Richardson will be our last speaker today.
After hearing the presentation, I find that I am struggling to maintain my composure, and therefore I'm going to speak very slowly and calmly, and I will cite my rights according to ADA and ask that you accommodate me in terms of the time frame. I am incensed that a mayor of the city council would admit she purposely excluded one of our finest elected officials. Not only that, but an elected official who is overseeing the schools, which embraces every child in our community. The other agencies that are involved, as the presenter said, they rely on grant money. Their funding has dried up. So when I asserted at the beginning of this meeting that the gang task force was nothing more than the truancy program, I was wrong. Because I will show to you and explain how this is not just a rearticulation of the truancy program, but it is now a bigger bureaucracy. And when the presenter mentioned the word funding, we're talking about 4 times the funding. And when the presenter mentioned institutionalized strategies, I will prove to you that this is targeting a specific socio-economic population, and that is institutionalized racism. And as I said before, it does not matter if I have a seat on this board. I am an avowed educator, advocate, and a community activist. And I am going to drag the educators out of retirement, out of their ivory towers, and out of the woodwork. That means the books, from Aristotle to John Dewey to Howard Gardner, to take a look at this program that you posit will solve gang violence. I'm now going to explain how the truancy program is institutionalized racism. It
Okay,
takes,
just
okay,
one moment,
all
please,
I-
Ms.
then-
Smith. Yeah, it's okay, but we really need to make sure everybody has a chance. And
Yes.
take another minute, would you please,
Okay, I
and
will
that'll
take
give you some
another
extra
minute,
time.
because somebody mentioned that 3 children have died. Sorry, that's incorrect. I know of 12 children who have killed themselves because they could not face their problems here. We have to change from authoritarian rule to democratic education. And the Department of Education, the federal government, has a program to combat gang violence, and it's a behavioral modification of our classrooms. Now, the truancy program takes those kids who are truant, failing 3 classes, or expelled for whatever reason, and has them involuntarily transferred to these schools, which do not have the personnel to serve their learning disabilities. And I have been to the SARB. I know Fred Razzo. I tried to get on the SARB to be a community participant, and he said, we already have one. Her name was on the rolls of the Drug and Alcohol Prevention Agency, and she was not a parent of school-aged children.
Okay, Mrs. Smith, I need to ask you to conclude right now because I need to go to Mr. Richardson, so.
We will be heard.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Richardson, and you're the last speaker, and then we'll hear from the boards.
My name is Jordan Richardson, and I'm with the group Esperanza. We're started by youth and supported by parents, as Jackie said before. And I just wanted to talk about the gang intervention specialist that is going to be hired or is thinking about being hired. So the program is here to help the community with this gang intervention person and to build trust with the youth. But if they find out what the program says, it's stated the outreach worker would be the eyes and ears at schools and on the streets, providing school officials with information on potential gang conflict and violence. The kids aren't going to like that. They're going to think that the intervention person is a snitch or someone that's going to tell on them. So this idea of having them as the eyes and ears, I don't think it's going to work. Being a youth and growing up around kids from the west side, from the east side, I know kids from both sides, they're going to see this and hear about this and just not trust this guy or girl, whoever it is. So I think with the families and having this person talk to families or talk to the kids, but not really like run back to the board or whoever he's going to run back to and tell them what's going to happen next in the streets, that's just going to have the kids like not trust them. So I think it's a good idea, the program, but just about the intervention guy, I don't think he should be acting as someone that's going to tell on the kids. And that's all I have to say.
Very clear. Thank you very much. Thanks for your input. Okay, very good. Let's bring it back to the board and the council, and let's make sure everybody has a chance to comment. So shall we just start and walk down the line? Would that be all right? Okay, Ms. Harder?
Technology is my friend. I appreciate all the input that we received, particularly the presentation that was made and much of the public comment. We're really grappling at the board level what to do with these potential positions, how to structure them, how to train people, what kind of infrastructure we want supporting them. And I think I received some help today, some valuable assistance. So that's it.
Great. Thank you very much. Ms. Falcone?
Thank you. Thank you all for coming, really, and giving your input. And I think that it's because this is a brand new program that there's a lot of learning to do. And there's a lot of outreach that still needs to be done. And if I remember correctly, did Esperanza start on the West Side neighborhood by a woman whose name escapes me at the moment, but she started going around to various different homes and so forth, because and I want to talk to you afterward, because there was in the very beginning, there was a specific request that it just be the parents and it just be the neighborhood. And so if that's evolved, I know a lot of us would like to know about that. So we need to know a lot more about your organization as it is new, and we need to incorporate your organization into what we do. Because this really was a collaboration between all of the various different entities. There are 900 different nonprofits in the area, and a lot of them really don't know each other. A lot of them don't know the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, and so on. So to bring them together was really what the city's role in this was in the beginning. And then targeting, the violence so that we could get, strategically to at least address the violence. It was, one of the main things in the beginning. Now, the program has certainly evolved, and it's going to have multiple phases. And learning disabilities, which happens to be my first career, actually, I was a special ed teacher, and learning disabilities was part of it, is a huge factor. It absolutely is. There's just no denying that. But this started in a particular focus, and should that broaden? Absolutely. But I guess we're evolving. We're coming along, and we need the community's help in that. I think your point is absolutely right on. That definition. He's not meant to be a snitch. He's meant to be somebody who can build a relationship. And so when somebody says, I want out of the gangs, or I need help in figuring out which one of these many wonderful programs do happen in the schools for vocational training and so forth, how do I do that? How do I raise my GPA? So maybe it needs to be reworked and redefined, and maybe you can help us, with that. I'm very proud of this program. I'm very proud of the efforts that the entire community has done on behalf of trying to address the issue. It's like a baby, so we need to nurture it. This is the village. This is raising the children. So we need everybody's help, and I'm very proud of it so far, and we want it to go on the right track. So we need to make sure that we get all the outreach that we need. And the public was invited, just like we were invited to sit in the audience. I attended lots of the meetings. I know a lot of people did. But if we didn't do proper outreach to experts, then we are remiss in that, and we need to correct that. But believe me, the entire community is absolutely invited to everything that we do on this, because we are the village collectively. So thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you. Dr. Noel.
Yes, well, looking forward, I would like to, I don't know whether a motion's in order, but if I could put a motion, a procedural motion.
Well, we're not really allowed to take action.
Well, then I'll just say, if I could make a motion.
That's a great way to do it. Very good.
I would move that the next step be taken as soon as possible, and that it include a workshop with widespread public announcement and outreach to include the public in this process.
Great. Thank you very much. Ms. Parker?
I guess, first of all, I have one more question, and that is, what is the definition of youth in the youth gang violence? Is there a specific age range that 20 and under? Was that it? I don't know.
Dr. Sauer,
Was
okay.
there
Mr. Olson?
It doesn't include me. The 17,000 number that we used on the graphic was all the kids in school from K through 12. And it included private schools within the city.
And I'm trying to remember, those were the ones that were...
That's the total population.
Just the total population.
Right. Then the other numbers were estimates from our that came through our police department.
But did that include numbers up to, say, age 20, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds?
No, it was...
It's only school age?
Yeah,
Okay.
and not just public schools, but private schools as well.
Yeah. I think that we also, I agree that we've gotten some really valuable input today. And I hope that we, the school district, will use that as we reflect on our discussion about whether or not we're going to jump ahead with gang intervention specialists or outreach workers. My concern with it is with the city not quite through with the process, that if we commit money in a certain area, but then there are shifts along the way over the next few weeks and months, that we may have backed ourselves into a corner where we can't say, oh gosh, that would have been a great idea, and that's what we should have done first. And so I know that we'll be talking about that again, but that is a concern for me. But obviously, we need to move forward, and I really want to compliment the city on. I see that it would be great if there's more input from parents and students, but the process that you've gone through is still really impressive. But the school district hasn't gone through that process, and we need to do that for ourselves as well. So I hope that that's something that we'll be working on immediately too.
Okay, great. Dr. Malikoff?
Well, as you know, we were about to vote last time, last meeting, and we decided what we needed was the bigger picture. And to hear Mr. Lopez tell us the bigger picture was very helpful to see where our piece fits in there. We have such limited funding. And we were first asked, I was on vacation, but we were asked to fund even bigger, more outreach workers. And we realized we don't have that kind of funding, and we just have maybe enough for 2, which is not your whole picture. Whether that makes sense, whether we still have to grapple with that, I think, as Ms. Harder said. We still have to work with that. And we only have limited funds, and there's so many competing interests there. But this helps. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Ms. Cordero?
Yeah, I've been very public in my support for these positions. I harken back to shortly after the homicide on well, actually shortly before and shortly after the homicide on State Street when Angel Linares was murdered. Just a week or maybe even less than a week before that homicide took place, I had been at a meeting, a town hall meeting, in which parents from mostly, I think, from the West Side, were meeting with members of the police gang task force, and were asking, what can we do? Because the police had identified that they were concerned that there seemed to be an increase in gang activity. They were concerned that there was a potential for an increase in violence, and so the parents were meeting, and there was a lot of concern on the part of the parents. Then shortly after the stabbing, I think many of us, most of the city council, maybe all of the city council, unfortunately not as many of the board members, were at a meeting at La Casa, in which I was struck by how many of the young people who came, many of whom had been on his friends, were saying, why does it take a child getting killed before you do anything? They were adamant that they said they had been raising issues, that people knew these problems were going on, and no one had done anything. No one, and in their perception, no one had seemed to care about it until a child actually got killed. And so I'm looking at, I keep remembering them saying, why didn't anybody do anything about this before? And that has been the impetus behind my support, is that I think, what have we done since then? Since we heard those children saying, why didn't you do anything? What have we done? We've studied it. I think the summer short-term program was a great start, but I think, I feel like we need to keep moving forward. We need to do something on behalf of those young people who were in tears. I mean, and I just feel like we owe it to them. And I agree with something that Mr. Lopez said earlier, which is, yes, this isn't perfect, but if we wait until it's completely perfect, those young people are going to still be waiting and saying, why aren't you doing anything? So I don't want us to do the wrong thing. I certainly don't want us to do anything that's going to make the problem worse. But I do want us to move. I want us to go forward, and I agree that I appreciate all of you being here, because I think that the input that you've given has helped us to refine our thoughts on how the positions, or if it's not the positions, whatever next steps we take should go forward. But I just want to keep in mind that every single day, as we continue to debate this issue, there are children in our schools who are in need of our support. And the longer we take to give it to them, the more of them we lose. So I just, for whatever it's worth, I want to say that.
Okay, Ms. Schneider?
Thank you, well said. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I think what Member Cordero was saying, that the thought that just went through my mind is that we don't want the perfect to get in the don't want the perfect to get in the way of the good, and so we do need to keep the momentum going. And I really appreciate a lot of the comment here today, and really want to, I think, take home for me between Monday's presentation and today's presentation that there shouldn't be two different camps here trying to do the same thing. We all want to do the same thing. We have different perspectives and different places where we're coming from to get to go to the same place at the end, but we don't want to be seen, or we shouldn't be seen as working against each other. So the point of bringing in more input and ideas and feedback from parents and students in a way that's in the structure, but maybe not in the same structured way, and however it works to get that information across, I think is going to be very important. I think members from Esperanza, especially, and Pueblo mentioned that. At the very least, I would suggest that along with the additional outreach to tell people about meetings, that the members of the school board, Pueblo and Esperanza, be added to the email list that is in addition to the public notices go out, so at least you get notices that way with the notes and the agendas. I mean, every time anyone has come into any of these meetings, if they wanted to, they could sign up, and anyone interested could get that information. And so certainly you should be included in that. Kate Parker mentioned, the city's not quite through the process. I just want to emphasize this. Yes, the city is convening these meetings, but it's not a city process. And I think that it's really important that that the city does play a very important role of convening and facilitating and help connect the dots, because we're in that role and we can do that, and we have the organization behind us to help make that happen. But it can't just be the city alone. It has to be so much bigger than that. So I hope the process is much more involved and inclusive. Certainly, the board members have a big decision to make next week. I'm not going to say what you should do, but these are the questions that went through my mind, and if that helps in any way in your deliberations, take it or not. I don't care, but just what went through my mind. First off, what came out of the summer that seemed to be very impressive and fruitful and helpful had to do with the case management of the process involved, the individuals involved who were connected with different organizations, who could interact directly with the youth member and the parents, and whatever it is that they needed. And it was that case management philosophy and system that was put together. And I'm not quite sure, just by briefly understanding what it is that's being proposed by the school district, whether it's the same thing. There's all these terms being used around case worker, youth gang specialist, intervention specialist, but what seemed to work really well was case management or in that connectivity piece. So that was a question that went through my mind. The other questions through my mind was, I guess, who are these people reporting to? Is it someone in the district? Is the district able to have that kind of social service aspect to it? I don't know the answer to that. Can the money be earmarked in a way to answer some of these questions, and then figure out these details and use that funding to try to leverage other funding elsewhere? Because the last thing we want to do the big message I heard on Monday through and today was the feeling of broken promises, that we would say something, we want to do something, we're going to do something, we want to promise a job, we want to promise a program, and maybe for a little while it works, and then funding runs out and we have nothing. And the kid and the youth members just said, see, told ya. And that, we can't do that again. So having some funding up front that is good for a year or so, where is it going to go after that? And are we going to set ourselves up to end up, giving some broken promises? And is there a way that we can use this process that's been put in place to try to augment that in order to ensure that we keep our promises and keep that momentum going. So those were just some of the ideas and thoughts that went through my mind with this, because it's very important. Our next steps are going to be crucial in terms of whether this works or not, and who's involved in it. And I'm also very pleased with the progress so far, and you know, I've only been able to digest this for a couple of days in terms of how is this going to work, and we definitely need the community involved to help us get to those answers. So I thank you for the report, and thank you all for staying.
Okay, Mr. Francisco?
Thank you. I think most everything's been said, so I won't spend too much time on this. The program that was established this summer, and there are many people in this room who were very active in it, and I really appreciate their efforts. The focus of that, of course, really was on the intervention and suppression part of what we were talking about, and there was a reason for that. It was a very tactical decision to try as much as possible to prevent any more kids from getting injured or killed in gang violence. So it was sort of a crash effort to achieve that one goal, as well as setting up a foundation for future efforts. But I absolutely agree that ultimately in the long run, prevention is what is needed. And also, as someone who first got involved in politics through a community organization, obviously input from the community is absolutely vital. And there is so much to be done and so much to be learned, and that kind of involvement will be welcomed. So thank you.
Okay, very good. And just for my part, I really appreciate everyone who came to speak today. This is really the reason we have these, is not just to make presentations up on a screen somewhere, but it's actually to create a venue for people to participate and have input. And it's very good input. It's the kind of stuff that we all need to hear. If this is anything, it's not a city program, it's not a school district program, it's got to be the community's program. And Esperanza and other groups like yourselves, because you may not be the only ones out there who are rallying the same way, really need to be in sort of an ownership position, able to participate fully. And so I very much hope and admonish, I don't have to, I mean, it's being designed to be an open community process, but we need to continue to do better to make sure everybody is included. And so, and then another key point that I got from this, there's a real value to having what we do be research-based. There's a really important value to have us use the good science that's there, and we're getting hit in the gut by our concern for the kids in our community. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be super smart about it when we go after using this approach or that approach. So I think that our goal is to have, and I believe this firmly, is to have this be a community-based program, truly in its best sense, and that all those agencies and all the organizations, including the school district and the city council and other city councils and other city, school districts, that we're resources for the community. And if it's in that relationship, I think we're going to get pretty far. So anyway, that kind of concludes our remarks, I think, on this one. We have one more item on our agenda. We can do it very briefly. We're to identify topics for placement on the next agenda. If there's something that you can think of, just perhaps in a word so we get it on registered, something that you think that we should take up the next time we meet, which will be in 6 months. No, this is our joint meeting we're talking about now, for the next joint meeting. Yes, please, Nancy.
Mr. House, it's not a future agenda matter. I just want to have everyone bear with me for a minute. Before we adjourn today, I want to express my personal gratitude to the City of Santa Barbara, to the council members, to city staff. Even though I have 3 more months of hard work ahead of me on the school board, this marks my last and actually Laura's last joint city council school board meeting. And 8 years ago, when I was a new school board member, I met on a pretty regular basis with Marty. I'm sorry she's not here, to share our concerns, our mutual concerns. And Marty said, you know, they're all of our kids. And that was the seed for moving forward with this effort. We went to our administrators at the time, and everyone was very much in favor of the effort. And it was really a question of scheduling the time. And it took a while. And it also took a while to get twice yearly meetings. And our agendas got broader and deeper and better, and we are definitely improving the quality of life for young people in our community, and I'm really proud of that. I think it's a model for other communities, for city councils and school boards to meet on a regular basis. And I think it's not too dramatic to say that at this point in time, we're engaged in a fight for the lives of some of our students. So it makes these meetings and community participation in these meetings even more critical. Thank you. Thank you all. I've really, really appreciated the relationship.
I think the feeling is very mutual. Let's just, thank you very much for that. Yeah. Well, I'm still going to stay on task for this before we leave. This is item 15. Anything in particular that you want to have us take up the next time, even the two of you who are taking off? So,
I want a report on this.
Okay. Follow up and a report on how this is going, definitely. Okay.
With documentation well in advance.
Yes, sir. Got it. Anybody else? Okay, I did have, yes. Go ahead.
I think that your board, because you are an integral part of, and Dr. Sarvis is at all of these meetings and part of the executive board and so forth. I don't see why you can't have more frequent updates. We get updates at the city council fairly frequently, and Dr. Sarvis, I would hope that you would keep them in the loop as much as possible and not have to wait for our joint meeting. I hope that's not putting too much on your plate, but it's so important because this is a collaboration with everybody, and our two entities are absolutely key together. A lot of others are key as well, but I really would like you to stay as up to date as schedules permit.
Okay. Ms. Renard, you had a topic. If you could just give us, please, the title of the topic, and then we'll stick around and get the details from you because we need to wrap this up. But let's turn that mic on so we can all hear you. There you go. As briefly as you can, just so that we can make sure it gets in the
This
mix.
is an issue concerning both the city and the schools, and that is the presence of toxins on the site of El Puente School, which has been mentioned. The Santa Barbara School, the city, that's a property in the city. City staff were involved in identifying the toxins before El Puente was put onto that site. And they didn't know there was a school there for 7 years until a citizen whistleblower called the monitoring agency. So county schools did not tell the monitoring agencies there was a school on that site for 7 years. Only now because we've been, so anyway, I think that should be on the agenda next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Kate, if you're going to ask us to put something on the future agenda, come right up here and do it. Come up, come up, come up. What is it that what topic would you like to see discussed at the next joint meeting? No? Okay, very good. With that, I believe we're going to... Please, please just... That'll be way past. It's 6 months from now.
Well, I
Yes, ma'am.
need your help. I have been trying to get the visa statements from the SELPA that were rubber stamped by a board for 10 years every month, a Visa card with up to $6,000 in expenses, but they were not seen. So 5 years ago, I asked for the California Public Records request. They said the records are confidential. Now they say they don't have the records.
Okay.
So I'm asking.
Thank you.
I'm asking for your
Okay,
help.
I don't have any context for this, but I appreciate that. We've written it down, and we'll make sure that we discuss it and see if it's something for the next agenda. Thank you very much.
Well, you'd
we
have
are
to- you'd
adjourned,
have to ask
everyone.
the
Thank you
grand
very
jury.
much.